Story 1. In-laws blamed me for not giving them a grandchild, and my ex-husband supported them despite my positive fertility results. They humiliated me by calling me a broken woman. So, I, 32F, was married to my ex-husband. I'll call him Jake, 34M, for 5 years. We had a pretty good relationship at first. When we met, Jake was charming, funny, and easy to talk to. I really thought I had found someone who would always have my back. But everything changed after we got married. Jake's parents, especially his mom, started pressuring us to have kids pretty much right after the wedding. At first, it was lighthearted comments like, "When are we getting a grandchild?" But soon, it became the only thing they ever wanted to talk about. For context, Jake is an only child, and his parents were always very controlling. His mom was the kind of person who had a plan for everything, like how Jake should live, who he should marry, and what his life should look like. I didn't realize it when we were dating, but his family had a lot of say in what Jake did. He had this need to get their approval for everything he ever did. He especially needed his mom's approval, which ended up causing a lot of tension between us. Anyway, after about 2 years of marriage, the pressure from his parents to have kids went from annoying to unbearable. We had been trying, but nothing was happening. So, I decided to go to the doctor to make sure everything was okay on my end. All my tests came back fine, which was a relief for me. So obviously, I suggested that Jake get tested too, just to rule out any issues. That's when things started to go downhill. Jake absolutely refused to get tested. He acted like I had insulted him by even bringing it up. He kept insisting that he was not the problem and refused to even discuss it. I was frustrated because I just wanted to figure out what was going on so we could move forward, but Jake was stuck in this weird, prideful mindset. He acted like it was impossible for him to be the issue, or that it was even embarrassing for him to have an issue. But with the way he kept refusing to take the tests, I just kept feeling worse and worse about myself. I couldn't help but feel like I was still the one at fault, even though the doctors told me there was nothing wrong with me. Meanwhile, Jake's parents would not give up on their intrusive questions and remarks. Every time we visited them, they would bring up their future grandchildren. It got to the point where I started dreading going to family events because I knew it would be all they would talk about. No matter how many times I tried to explain that these things take time or that we were working on it, his mom would give me this condescending look, like she was disappointed in me. Then they started making comments directly to me about how they hoped I wasn't the problem. At one family dinner where a bunch of Jake's distant relatives were present, Jake's mom straight up told me that she hoped I was damaged, really loudly in front of everyone, with this fake concerned look on her face. I was humiliated. Jake said nothing. He just sat there, awkwardly laughing it off like it wasn't a big deal. That hurt more than anything. I felt like he should have defended me, but instead, he let his parents walk all over me. I tried to talk to him about it, but he brushed it off and said it was just his mom's sense of humor. A few months later, we had another family dinner, and Jake's mom decided to make another one of her nasty comments. But this time, she didn't hold back. She worked herself into hysterics and began crying about how old she was getting and how I was ruining her dreams of having a grandchild. She then began yelling in my face and called me a broken woman and a disgrace to womanhood. Everyone remained silent. I was horrified. I did everything I could to hold myself back from disrespecting her. I knew that she loved humiliating me in front of her family, but that was beyond uncalled for. I looked around to see if anybody had anything to say, and everyone pretty much continued looking down at their plates. Other than that, Jake's dad nodded with his wife in agreement. Jake, like the rest of his family, just stared at his plate and pretended that nothing was happening. That was it. That was my breaking point. I couldn't believe that after everything I had been through while trying to figure out why we couldn't conceive, Jake still refused to stand up for me. I think seeing him sit there silently and not even once look at me made me realize just where our marriage stood. That night, when we got home, I packed my bags and told Jake I was leaving. He barely reacted. It was like he didn't care that I was done. He was just so used to his parents being the priority that he didn't even realize he had lost me. That only made me angrier. I mean, how hard is it to stand up for someone you supposedly love? I left that day and never looked back. Of course, Leaving wasn't easy, but it was the best decision I've ever made. After I left, I moved in with a friend for a few months while I figured out my next steps. I filed for divorce and things went surprisingly smoothly. Jake didn't fight it and we ended things quietly. Once the divorce was finalized, I focused on rebuilding my life. I got back into my career, surrounded myself with supportive friends, and eventually, I met someone new, my now husband, Sam, 35M. Sam has been a complete breath of fresh air. He's the opposite of Jake in so many ways. He listens, communicates, and most importantly, he has my back no matter what. We ended up dating for only a year, though, because I ended up getting pregnant and we rushed to get married. And let me tell you, I've had a much better time with Sam in this short amount of time compared to the entire time I had with Jake. Anyway, Sam and I were over the moon about my pregnancy. It meant a lot more to me, considering everything I had been through with Jake and his family. Now, on to what happened recently. One day, while I was out shopping with Sam, I ran into Jake's parents at the mall. Just to recap, it's been 2 years since I last saw them. I was visibly pregnant at that point, and their reaction was priceless. They were shocked, to say the least. They tried to act polite by making small talk, but I could tell they were shocked to see me pregnant. I will admit that a small part of me felt vindicated when I saw their reactions. I mean, they spent years tormenting me and putting me down for not being able to get pregnant, but look where I reached. I bid them goodbye pretty quickly and almost immediately forgot that I even met them. Sam and I were very busy preparing for the baby, and I had no interest in dwelling on the past. But then, about a week after that mall run-in, I started getting texts and calls from Jake. At first, I ignored them. I figured his parents told him about my pregnancy and new marriage and that Jake was just being nosy. But he didn't stop. So I finally opened one of his texts. He was furious. After his parents saw me pregnant, they confronted him about our marriage and why we never had kids. Apparently, when his parents thought that I was the reason that they weren't able to have kids, Jake never thought to correct them. In fact, he even encouraged them, thinking that I was the problem. When they saw me pregnant, they realized that they had been lying too. From what I gathered, his parents were absolutely livid when they found out the truth. They accused him of wasting years of their lives by making them think they'd never have grandchildren because of me, when in reality it was probably Jake who had fertility issues. To make matters worse for Jake, his parents had always planned to leave him a large inheritance. But after discovering his lies, they cut him off completely. Now, of course, Jake blamed me for all of this. He said that if I hadn't flaunted my pregnancy in front of his parents, none of this would have happened. He accused me of ruining his life because now he had lost everything, including the inheritance he had been counting on. I couldn't believe he was trying to pin this on me. All I did was move on with my life, and the fact that his lies came back to bite him wasn't my fault. I haven't responded to Jake's messages, and I don't plan to. I'm happy with where I am now, and I have no interest in getting involved in his family drama. The way I see it, Jake dug this hole for himself. If he hadn't let his parents treat me like garbage, or lied to them about why we couldn't have kids, he wouldn't be in this situation. I just wish he would stop trying to make me feel guilty for something that's entirely his fault. Even though I feel strongly about this, I happened to talk to a friend yesterday and I told her all about what happened. She told me that I was wrong for leaving Jake like that and that I should have pushed him harder to get tests done. She also told me that I shouldn't have engaged with Jake's parents and that it was petty of me to do so. I mean, I guess I can see how I was acting pretty petty. I never wanted to hurt Jake. I will admit, though, that Jake getting punished for it is a fun bonus. Anyway, my husband has assured me that whatever my friend said was garbage, but I can't help but wonder if there was some truth in what she said. So, AITA for leaving my ex-husband after his family called me broken. And am I wrong for not feeling guilty about him losing his inheritance? Update 1. Okay, so things have gotten a lot more complicated, and I seriously need to vent. After posting my original story, I figured that was the end of it. But oh boy, was I wrong. Jake has been blowing up my phone non-stop. I blocked his number, but then he started messaging me on social media. I blocked him there too, but he made new accounts just to keep reaching out to me. He even started calling from different numbers. I didn't respond to any of it, but the messages became more desperate and angry over time. At first, it was just him blaming me for ruining his relationship with his parents. But now, he's gone off the deep end, saying that I owe him because I took away his future. He keeps saying that if I had stayed with him, none of this would have happened. It's honestly exhausting. Some people in the comments on my original post agreed with my friend and asked why I didn't try harder to get Jake to take the fertility tests. So, let me clear that up. I tried. I really tried. But every time I even suggested it, Jake would shut me out completely. He acted like I had betrayed him just by bringing it up. There were days when he wouldn't speak to me at all because I asked about the tests. I did everything I could to be patient, but there's only so much you can do when someone is that stubborn. Eventually, I realized that I couldn't make him do something he wasn't willing to do, and I had to let it go for my own sanity. I've also seen some people saying that I must have been petty for flaunting my pregnancy in front of Jake's parents. Look, I didn't even plan to run into them. I was just out shopping with my husband, minding my business. It wasn't like I was actively looking out for them just so I could rub my pregnancy in their faces. That said, I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel satisfying to see their shocked expressions. I went through what I can only describe as a nightmare with them, constantly insulting me, making me feel like I was broken, and blaming me for everything. So yeah, it felt good to show them that I wasn't the problem or broken. But I wasn't trying to hurt Jake or cause any drama. I just wanted to live my life, and I considered our running a fun bonus for my self-esteem. But now, Jake has taken things to a whole new level. He's not just messaging me, he found out where I live. I have no idea how he managed to find my address, and I'm still genuinely terrified about it. He showed up at my house 2 nights ago. He pounded on the door for at least 15 minutes and demanded to talk to me. Luckily, my husband, Sam, was home and immediately told him to leave. Jake refused and said that he just needed to explain himself, but Sam shut that down real fast. He told Jake that if he didn't leave, we'd call the police. Jake finally backed off, but not before shouting that I had ruined everything for him. It was honestly terrifying. I can't help but think that he'd probably do something more unhinged if I let things go unchecked. A lot of people also asked how I found out that Jake lost his inheritance. Well, I didn't get all the details directly from him, thankfully. But from what I pieced together from his angry messages, it seems like his parents feel totally betrayed. They were furious when they realized that the reason they never got grandchildren wasn't because of me, but likely because of Jake himself. They feel like he lied to them for years by letting them believe that I was the issue, and since their entire focus was on having grandchildren, they decided that Jake no longer deserved the inheritance they had planned to leave him. From what I understand, they've now cut him off entirely, both emotionally and financially. Jake is completely devastated by this, which I guess is why he's coming after me so hard. I don't feel guilty about him losing the inheritance. I mean, what was I supposed to do? Stay in a toxic marriage just so his parents wouldn't find out the truth? That's not on me. Jake made his own choices. He could have come clean to his parents at any point, but instead, he let them treat me horribly and never once defended me. So no, I don't feel bad about what happened to him. If anything, it feels like karma finally catching up with him. That said, I can't lie, part of me feels a little nervous. Jake's behavior is starting to feel a little unhinged. My husband and I are already talking about taking extra precautions in case Jake shows up again. We've thought about installing cameras around the house and maybe even filing a restraining order if he doesn't back off. I want to believe that he'll just give up eventually, but something tells me that he's not going to let this go easily. It's like he's spiraling, and I have no idea what he might do next. So yeah, that's where things stand right now. I thought this chapter of my life was over, but apparently Jake had other plans. I just hope he realizes soon that I'm not the one responsible for his problems. All I did was move on with my life, and honestly, I'm happier than I've ever been. I just want to be left alone so I can enjoy the life I've built with my husband and our baby on the way. I'll keep you all updated if anything else happens, but for now, I'm just hoping Jake gets the message and leaves me alone. If not, I guess we'll have to take things to the next level and involve the authorities. Hopefully, it doesn't come to that. But at this point, who knows? Thanks to everyone who commented on my original post and gave me advice. It really helped me see that I wasn't crazy for leaving Jake or for feeling the way I do now. I'll update again if anything changes, but for now, I'm just trying to stay focused on the future and not let Jake's nonsense drag me back into the past. Update 2. Hey everyone, I didn't think I'd be back with another update so soon, but things have taken a wild turn. After my last update, I thought Jake would finally leave me alone. I mean, showing up at my house was already crossing the line, right? To Jake, that was nothing. Instead, he's now come up with a new plan, and it's just as ridiculous as it sounds. So after Sam, my husband, and I made it clear that we didn't want Jake anywhere near us, he started bombarding me with messages again. This time, though, instead of being all angry and blaming me for everything, Jake's tone completely changed. Suddenly, he was begging me for help. He started messaging me things like, "I need you to talk to my parents," and "You owe me this." He went from acting like a complete psycho to asking for favors. At this point, I was confused but also really curious about what he was planning to do. Basically, Jake is now convinced that if I talk to his parents and explain everything, they'll give him his inheritance back. He wants me to go to them, tell them it was all a misunderstanding, and somehow convince them that he's still worthy of the fortune they were going to leave him. At first, I thought it was a joke. Like, there's no way he actually believes I'd do that, right? But he's dead serious. He's acting like I can just wave a magic wand and fix everything for him. He even said, if I hadn't run into them, they never would have found out, and that he'd still be set for life. I could not believe the garbage coming out of his mouth. I could not believe that he did not realize that he was the one who caused all this by lying to them and treating me like garbage for years. The way he was so not self-aware was kind of crazy, and also kind of scary. It takes a serious amount of ego to completely deny responsibility for your own actions, you know? Anyway, I didn't respond to any of his unhinged texts, and he started getting more and more desperate. His messages went from begging to threatening in the span of a few days. He said things like, "If you don't help me, I'll make sure everyone knows you're a liar and you'll regret this." It's insane. He's clearly spiraling, and now he's trying to use threats to get me to do what he wants. Unfortunately for him, I'm not scared of him. At least not anymore. I've dealt with enough of his nonsense to know that he's all talk, and so there's no way that I'm getting involved in his family drama again. I managed to avoid him by blocking all his new numbers and accounts again, but I have this sinking feeling that he's not going to stop. He's already shown up at my house once, so what's stopping him from trying again? My husband and I have talked about getting a restraining order, but we're still trying to figure out the best way to handle this. I don't want things to escalate, but I also can't keep living like this. I can't constantly keep wondering if Jake's going to pop up out of nowhere with more demands or threats. If he does pop out of nowhere and I refuse to do what he says, would he hurt me? He's clearly spiraling and not in the best state of mind, so I can't even say that he wouldn't hurt me if he had the chance to. To make matters worse, I found out that Jake's parents have been talking to some mutual friends, and apparently, they now think that I'm to blame for their family falling apart. They think I manipulated Jake into hiding the truth and that I'm the reason they're cutting him off. I don't even know where to start with that. It's like everyone in Jake's life is in complete denial about who he really is, and I'm stuck in the middle of their twisted reality. Anyway, I've been doing my best to ignore Jake's attempts to get in touch with me, but I'm not sure how much longer I can avoid this whole situation. I just want to focus on my pregnancy and my life with Sam, but Jake is making it impossible to move on. He's not just trying to get back into his parents' good graces. Instead, he's trying to drag me down with him, and I refuse to let that happen. I haven't decided what to do yet, but I'm considering reaching out to his parents myself, not to help Jake, but to set the record straight once and for all. If they want to blame me for their son's lies, that's on them. But I'm not going to sit back and let them spread rumors about me. At the same time, I'm worried that any contact with them might just make things worse. Feels like a lose-lose situation. So yeah, that's where things are at right now. Jake's gone from angry and blaming me to begging and threatening, and I have no idea what his next move will be. I'm just hoping he realizes that I'm not going to help him and backs off before things get even more out of control. I'll keep you all updated if anything else happens, but for now, I'm just trying to figure out my next steps. Thanks again for all the support. I never expected this whole situation to spiral like this, but it helps to know that I'm not alone in dealing with it. I'll update again if Jake does anything else, which, let's be real, he probably will. Update 3. Hey everyone, I have some bad news and some good news. The bad news is that this will be my last update. I know a lot of you have been very invested in my story, and I'm really grateful that a lot of you have been regularly checking in on me to make sure my baby and I are safe. As for the good news, I'm finally free of Jake. So, after Jake's last round of begging and threatening, I was really starting to worry. Sam, my husband, and I had already been talking about moving for a while, and with everything going on, we figured it was the perfect time to just get out of town and start fresh somewhere far away. We found a new place in a completely different state, packed our things, and left without telling anyone where we were going. I was just done with the drama. Besides, I'm pregnant, and I needed to focus on myself and the baby. But right before we left, something happened that I still can't believe. So remember how Jake's parents blamed me for everything? Well, turns out they finally decided to confront Jake directly. I got this news from one of Jake's cousins who ended up becoming a really good friend. Apparently, the confrontation was explosive. Jake initially tried to pin all the blame on me and tried his best to gaslight his parents into continuing their hatred for me so he could get his inheritance back. But his parents were adamant about figuring out why Jake needed the inheritance so badly. As far as they were concerned, they helped set him up for life. I mean, they found him a great job, bought him a house and paid off the mortgage, and helped him invest in good things so he had assets to fall back on if he ever needed it. Eventually, they managed to find out the truth from Jake. It turns out Jake had been lying to them about his finances for years. He told them he was saving money, working hard, and planning to take over the family business. But in reality, he was blowing all their financial help on who knows what. They found out that while I was working to support us when we were married, Jake was secretly spending huge amounts of money on stupid things like online gambling and vacations with his friends, and he never told them. He kept up the whole, "I'm a responsible son" act to make sure they'd keep him in the will. Well, when his parents discovered all this, they were beyond furious. Not only did they cut Jake off financially, but they also officially disowned him. They told him they didn't want anything to do with him anymore. The inheritance he was so desperate to get back? Completely gone. Apparently, Jake's parents had consulted their family, who taught them that they were being unnecessarily harsh towards Jake by not giving him an inheritance because of something he had no idea about. They only confronted Jake so he could come clean and they could talk about what to do moving forward. They were also going to put him back on their will so he could get his inheritance, of course, only if he owned up to his mistakes. But when they found out the truth, all possibilities of that happening went flying out the window. I have no idea what Jake is going to do now, but I'm glad it's no longer my problem. From what I've heard, he's scrambling to figure out his next move, and I wish him nothing but the best of luck with that. After hearing all this, I felt a huge sense of relief. For years, I thought I was the one who had failed, that maybe I hadn't done enough to fix things with Jake or his family. But now, it's clear that Jake was hiding so much more from everyone, not just me. His parents finally saw him for who he really is, and honestly, it feels like karma has come full circle. As for Sam and me, we've settled into our new home in another state, and things are going great. I feel so much safer now that we're far away from Jake and his drama. We've installed security cameras just in case, but so far, no sign of Jake or any more crazy messages. We even filed a restraining order before we left, just to make sure he couldn't follow us or try anything else. It feels so good to know that he can't come after us anymore. Oh, and here's the cherry on top. Jake's parents actually reached out to me. I got a message from them through the same cousin who told me about the confrontation, apologizing for how they treated me all those years. They said they had no idea Jake was lying to them and that they regretted everything they put me through. I don't know if I'll ever respond to them, but it was nice to get some kind of apology after everything. It's wild how things have changed. Anyway, I'm so happy to finally be able to focus on my life without all this drama hanging over me. Sam and I are so excited about our baby, and I'm glad we're in a peaceful place now where we can just enjoy this new chapter. The past few months have been stressful beyond belief, but I feel like we've come out on the other side stronger. Thanks again to everyone who supported me throughout this whole thing. Your comments and advice gave me the strength to keep going, and I appreciate it more than you know. That's it for now. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Wife's model sister has been flirting with me for 6 years, then tried to kiss me in the garage. When I rejected her, she sent a dick pic to my office and tried to get me fired. My wife's sister made a pass at me at a recent family gathering, and I have no idea what to do. For context, I think my wife, Jenna, is absolutely gorgeous, but she has some really negative body image issues. This is in large part because of her sister, Mary, who is very conventionally attractive, as opposed to Jenna's more unconventional but striking beauty. Mary was a successful model until a couple years ago and now works in the fashion industry. In our early days of dating, when I would tell Jenna she's beautiful, she would always say, "Just wait until you see my sister." When I did finally meet her family, she would randomly press me for weeks to talk about her sister, whether I thought she was more attractive than her, etc. I always told her the truth, that I think Mary is attractive in a boring way and that I think my wife is much more beautiful and interesting to look at. She wouldn't let it go until I confronted her about how uncomfortable it made me and asked her what was going on. This is when she told me that she always had a chip on her shoulder about her looks because of being compared with her sister growing up. They fell into the classic smart one/pretty one dynamic their whole lives. She also said Mary had a habit of being flirty with all of her exes and warned me that it would happen to me eventually. She then started sobbing and begging me not to cheat on her with her sister, to which I forcefully said I would never cheat on her with anyone, let alone her sister. I've been crazy about my wife since day one, and there's literally no woman on earth who could come close to her. I honestly didn't believe her about the flirting at first. I assumed it was just an extension of her insecurity, but I was wrong. Whenever we get together with my wife's family, Mary always finds ways to touch me and make little innuendos/comments about me or my body. It's super uncomfortable for everyone, especially my wife, and I've called her out on it before. She'll cool it for a while but eventually start doing it again. It's been 6 years of this, and every time it happens, my wife is upset for days, and I have to do a lot of reassuring. On to the current problem. A few days ago, we were at my Mill's birthday party, and Mary asked me to help her grab some things from the garage. As soon as we walked into the garage, she turned and pressed me up against the door with her whole body and started trying to kiss me. I immediately pushed her off and asked her what the fuck she was doing. She started giggling and saying she was just doing what we both had been thinking and kept insisting, "You know you want to." I told her she was out of her mind and ran out of there. I went straight to my wife and told her we were leaving. The whole ride home she was asking me what was wrong. I wasn't sure whether to tell her because I knew how much it was going to hurt, but I also thought Mary would probably try to spin it as me making a move on her, so I knew I had to just say it. I told her everything, and she cried the whole way home. For the last several days, Mary has been calling and texting my wife, doing exactly what I thought she would do, even telling my wife that I said she, Mary, was the hottest girl I've ever seen, which I had to assure my wife a million times that I did not and would never say. Even though she believes my account of the situation, she's been a complete wreck the last several days. She's hardly eating. She pulls away from my touch when I try to hug her or just hold her hand. She says she feels hideous and disgusting, and I don't know what to do. This is the lowest I have ever seen her, and it hurts to see how much she's hurting. I have no idea what to do to help her heal from this. Reddit, what should I do? Update 1. I got a few requests for updates, so here it is. I first want to thank everyone so much for your advice. It was extremely helpful and gave me a lot to think about. I'm especially thankful for the folks that asked me how I was doing. I realized that I have literally never had a chance to check in with myself after these things happen, and I've actually been holding a lot of frustration and resentment about it all. I've been harassed for years, and it has either been brushed off or it's been eclipsed by the impact it has on my wife. I don't blame her for it, but this has been a good lesson in me not burying my feelings for the sake of others, even for her. I also want to clarify a couple of things that came up. Several people asked about how my wife's family feels about all this, and I explained in a comment that her parents are toxic and treat Mary as the golden child, even though my wife is a freaking neuroscientist, amazingly talented musician, speaks 3 languages fluently and another 2 conversationally. My wife and her family are seriously the only people who don't seem to understand how exceptional she is. I remember meeting one of my wife's family friends and talking to them about her research, and they said, "Oh wow, her parents just told us she works at a university." whereas my parents literally introduce her as the family genius to everyone. It makes me so goddamn angry to think about how her shitty family has stolen her shine her whole life. She's literally a Renaissance woman, but all they care about is looks and money. Some folks asked me why I would ever put myself in a situation alone with Mary given everything she's done. I have no good answers for that other than I never thought she would actually try to do anything. That possibility just didn't exist in my head. I realize now that I should have seen this would happen eventually, and that I should have been less concerned with keeping the peace and more concerned with shutting Mary the fuck down before it escalated to this point. Hindsight is 20/20. Anyway, on to the update. The night I posted, I told my wife that if she wanted to try to repair her relationship with her sister, I would respect that, but that I don't feel comfortable being around her for the foreseeable future. I said Mary has obviously been deeply jealous of my wife her whole life because she is a hollow, ugly person whose entire value has an expiration date, while my wife actually has substance. I said that I think her whole family is toxic and has done nothing but put her down her whole life, but that only she can decide whether she still wants them in her life. I also told my wife that while I don't blame her for her emotional reaction, her insecurity is something that she needs to work on for our relationship to be healthy. What Mary did was sexual assault, and she's been sexually harassing me for years, but I have consistently put aside my own feelings about this problem because of how it affects her, and that has prevented me from getting the support that I need. I told her that her reaction only serves to punish herself and me for her sister's behavior, and there's no reason to give her that kind of power. I also told her something that a commenter said that really resonated with me. The only people who have ever considered her second best are her and her family. Everyone else sees her for who she really is. She was crying the whole time and agreed that she needed to go to therapy to work on her insecurity. We were able to find a therapist who specializes in body image/self-esteem issues to work with her individually, and we're looking for a couples therapist too. My wife sent a message to her parents and sister that explained exactly what happened and told them she would reach out to them if she ever feels ready to repair their relationship. We blocked all of them everywhere, but Mary has, of course, been spamming my family and our friends with nonsense claiming I attacked her. I'm a drug addict, I abuse my wife, all kinds of bullshit that thankfully nobody believes. My wife is still down in the dumps, but I can see that things are getting a little better. She's eating and sleeping more, and she's cuddling with me in the mornings again, which is nice. Now I'm planning a surprise getaway for us this weekend. We're going to one of our favorite places, and I'm going to wine and dine her and try to make her feel like the goddamn queen she is. I want to thank you all again for your help. You really helped me understand the severity of the problem. And again, thanks for helping me connect with my own feelings about all this. Y'all are the best. Update 2. First, I want to say that I've gotten so many questions about who Mary is, and I'm just not going to say. Suffice it to say that she's never been household name famous, but she made a living solely on modeling for about a decade from what I understand, so she must have been popular enough that fashion people might know her. I really don't know how that whole world works, but it doesn't matter how many names you drop. You're not famous if you don't have a Wikipedia page. Also got lots of comments that mostly jokingly called me a simp, and I can't argue with that. I totally am a simp for my wife. She's the coolest. I hope you all find a love that makes you feel this way. Okay, I think that's it. Here is the actual update. My wife loved the getaway weekend. We had a blast, and by the end of it, she said she felt like herself again. For a few days after we got back, things were really quiet, so we were hopeful that Mary had finally given up, but I felt uneasy about it all. Many of you warned that Mary would try to interfere with my work, and while I initially dismissed it, I figured I would reach out to my boss just in case. I've been working at the same company for almost 10 years, and she's heard me vent about Mary before, so I didn't have to explain too much. My boss just reassured me that she knows my real character and would let me know if Mary tried anything. As you predicted, Mary did try to contact my boss a couple of days later, and the following is a recounting of what my boss told me. Apparently, Mary said that I needed to be fired because I was a predator and claimed to have proof that I assaulted her. My boss said that was a very serious accusation to make and asked Mary to explain what proof she had. Mary claimed there was a camera that caught the whole incident, and my boss asked her to send the video. Then Mary got flustered and said the police had it, so my boss asked her to send over a copy of the police report. Then Mary said it had a lot of private information in it, so my boss asked her to redact the private information and send it over. Then Mary said she didn't feel comfortable with that, and my boss told her that she could not take action against an employee based on word of mouth from a stranger. Then Mary shouted at her about victim blaming and hung up. Unfortunately, that was not the end of it. Last Wednesday, Mary somehow sent an email from my personal email account with a dick pic, not mine, obviously, to the entire office. My best guess is that I must have left my email logged in on one of my in-laws' devices. She's definitely not smart enough to actually hack me. And I know this is completely beside the point, but of course, she chose the weirdest-looking dick I've ever seen. I played team sports all my life. I've seen a lot of dicks, and this was something else. It's honestly kind of funny to think about Mary Googling gross penis or something and sifting through hundreds of images to find just the right one. I had to apologize to everyone on staff, and thankfully, folks were surprisingly understanding. It's actually been kind of a nice bonding experience with my coworkers. I honestly didn't consider myself to be super well-liked in the office, but it feels like everyone has been going out of their way to be kind to me, and it means a lot. Anyway, at this point, it was clear we had to escalate things legally. I really wanted to avoid it, but she forced my hand. My wife and I have a lawyer friend who helped us draft a cease and desist letter outlining her continued harassment and the material and emotional damage this is causing us. My wife then sent a message to Mary and my in-laws with a copy of the letter and made it very clear that we would pursue criminal and/or civil proceedings if her harassment continued. My wife's mom then called her crying and begged her to just let it go and leave Mary alone. My wife calmly explained that Mary is the only person responsible for this whole situation and that their parents have always enabled her awful behavior. She also said something she later regretted, but I think was pretty badass. Mary is going to stick you two in a nursing home and steal your money the minute she has the chance, and you deserve it. After the way her mom reacted, my wife is firmly settled on cutting off her family completely. This happened on Friday, and on Sunday, Mary's best friend added me and sent my brother a message on Facebook to say Mary is going to leave us alone and to please not sue her. I told my brother not to respond, then just sat and enjoyed the idea that Mary was out there somewhere freaking out about the potential of having to actually face the consequences of her actions. It must be such a strange feeling for her. Since then, we haven't heard a peep from the grapevine. It feels like things are finally starting to go back to normal. My wife is starting therapy next week and will be starting couples therapy in a month or two. She wants to do some work on herself first. She's also taking a short leave from work to rest and recharge. I'm so proud of her for standing up for herself with her family and finally putting her mental health and well-being first. Thanks again for everyone who offered advice. This was a messy situation, but it definitely would have been messier without your help. Update 3. I forgot about this account completely until today and logged in to see so many comments and messages asking for an update. It's honestly touching to see how many people care about this situation and want the best for me and my wife. This will be a brief update. I don't want to make this a regular thing, and the original situation has resolved enough that I am hopeful this will be the end of the saga. Mary and my in-laws have pretty much left us alone. My mill still tries to contact my wife every now and then, but she's made it clear to her family that if the first words out of their mouths aren't, "I'm sorry," she isn't interested in a conversation. As you can see, the past 6 months have made my wife a badass. She has done some amazing work in therapy, and her confidence is growing all the time. It's not just with her family. She's more comfortable asserting herself at work, with strangers, with friends, etc. She's even stopped putting up with some of my bullshit. To be fair, that bullshit is stuff like my leaving my socks everywhere around the house. But I'm seriously proud of her for telling me to cut it out. I'm becoming a more responsible and supportive partner because she's able to communicate her needs and expectations without feeling guilty about it. And I'm able to communicate things to her without intense emotions fully eclipsing the conversation. I didn't mention this in my earlier posts, but my wife does struggle with rejection sensitivity, even outside of her family. Often, if I brought up something that I felt needed to change, her emotional reaction to feeling like she did something wrong would be really intense, and instead of dealing with the problem, it would become about regulating her emotions. Now my wife has really good coping tools that allow her to talk about the problem without thinking she is the problem. And the biggest update: she's pregnant. We have a baby girl due in February. I am shitting my pants with excitement. We are going to love her so much and teach her that she is more than her beauty. She's going to have happy parents who love each other and work through issues as a team. The toxic cycle will be broken. Jenna's family doesn't know, and she's not sure if when she'll tell them. But if she does, there are going to be strong boundaries in place for how they can be a part of our daughter's life, and it'll start with family therapy. For now, she has one set of grandparents that will go to the end of the earth for her, and that's more than enough. My family has been absolutely incredible in their support, and they're so excited for us. Things are looking better than they ever have. That's all, folks. Thanks again for your support on this wild journey. Update for Hello everyone. I have come here for advice before, and you were all incredibly helpful, and I could really use some support again. Jenna and I had our first daughter in February. She's amazing and we're doing great. We ended up moving away from Jenna's home state, New York, to mine, MA, to be closer to my family, and they've been incredibly helpful with the baby. We have not seen Jenna's family since cutting contact and blocking them everywhere, and we didn't tell them about the baby. Yesterday, we received a letter in the mail from my Mill and Phil. No idea how they got our address. Apparently, my Phil has been diagnosed with late-stage cancer and is being told he could be dead in weeks. In-laws went on about how sorry they were for the way they handled the situation with Mary. They also apologized for the way they've treated my wife her whole life. Again, check post history. But basically Mary was the golden child and Jenna was an afterthought despite being super accomplished. They ended by saying they recently heard about the baby through the grapevine and want to meet their grandchild. To me, the apology seemed genuine. They went into detail on what they did wrong, apologized and expressed remorse, and explained what they should have done differently. They said they hope to earn our forgiveness with time and were willing to do family therapy to heal our relationship. Jenna is not having it. She feels like it's too little, too late, and doesn't want to respond. She also suspects that they're lying about Phil's cancer and just want to pressure us into reconciliation so they can meet the baby. It seems ludicrous, but I guess I wouldn't put it past them. I want to respect my wife's feelings around this, but I'm worried that if the cancer is real, she may regret not taking this opportunity for reconciliation before he dies. I expressed this to her, but she is adamant, and I haven't broached the topic since. My instinct is to wait a few more days until the shock wears off to talk about it again. I just don't know what the best way to approach it would be. I certainly don't want to force my wife to do anything she doesn't want to do, but I feel like she's not thinking clearly about this right now. It also must be noted that our baby is still struggling with sleep, and we're both tired and emotional all the time, so I feel like this might be influencing how she feels about all this. What should I do here? Should I try again, or just let it be? Edit. People, stop being mean to me. I too am tired and emotional, and my feelings are getting hurt. I am not forcing my wife to do anything. I brought it up one time. I know this is not about me. I don't personally care either way. I just want to support my wife. I intend to tell her I am here to listen/talk about it if she wants to, but I fully support her decisions around this. She has a great therapist she trusts, and I'll be here to support her however I can. Update 5. Hey everyone. Thanks for the comments on my last post. They were really helpful. Some were a little mean, but Reddit is what it is. Things have taken a disappointing turn, but we have some answers and we're working through it. First, my wife was right, the cancer story was bullshit. They were just trying to manipulate us. The same night I wrote my last post, I just let my wife know that I was here to listen if she wanted to talk about any of it, but that I would always support her no matter what she decided. She thanked me and I didn't bring it up again. She had her therapy session and afterwards said she wanted to talk. She said she wanted to get more information before making any decisions. She reached out to a trusted mutual connection and asked them to discreetly find out if the cancer was real. They reported back to say my Phil appeared healthy. My in-laws are apparently planning a European vacation for August, and they're telling people we are going with them. The connection was also able to confirm Mary is supposed to go on this trip along with her new boyfriend, much older, rich finance guy, shocker, and that my in-laws have not told anyone about what happened with me and Mary last year. They just told people we moved away for work. Obviously, at this point, any possibility of reconciliation was gone. I don't think I've ever seen Jenna angrier than when we found all of this out. Just the utter gall of them lying about something like terminal cancer to manipulate my wife into forgiveness. I'm still amazed they would stoop so low, but it was eye-opening to see comments on my last post talking about how common it is. They even call it Christmas cancer. Some people just have no shame. Jenna decided to write a letter this weekend explaining that she knew they were lying about everything. She told them that they and Mary are essentially already dead to her. She's processed that grief and recommends they do the same. She also said that if they try to reach out again, the next letter they receive will be from a lawyer. She told me that writing the letter was healing for her, so that's one small thing to be grateful for. We were left wondering who told them about the baby / gave them our address. I'm sure the address is not hard to find with public records, but we have been so careful about the baby. The connection we reached out to didn't even know about her until Jenna called. We / trust them, just didn't want to take any chances of it getting back. We went over for dinner at my parents' place a couple of days ago, and Jenna started telling them about what happened. I noticed my mother averting eye contact, and my heart sank into my stomach. I asked her if she had been the one to contact them, and she just started bawling, saying she couldn't imagine never knowing her own grandchild and just wanted us to heal and be a family together. My dad had no idea she had reached out and was shocked and disappointed in her as well. I went absolutely ballistic, while Jenna sort of just shut down and got this blank look on her face. I can't remember half of the things I said, but I ended by saying she would now know what it's like to not have access to her granddaughter, just like my in-laws. We took the baby and left right away, ignoring calls / texts from them and eventually my siblings. So now we're both feeling betrayed and heartbroken. Never in a million years did I think my mother would violate our trust like that. We're so close. She loves Jenna and the baby so much. My family knows exactly what happened with the in-laws. She can't claim ignorance. Obviously, we're taking a lot of space from them, but funnily enough, Jenna is advocating for us to not be too hasty in cutting them off. She feels like my mom was not acting maliciously and is open to giving her a second chance, especially given she's been nothing but supportive of me / my wife until this. Somewhere down there, I know she's right, but it's too fresh, and I'm still so angry. We've asked for space from my family, and they're being respectful about it. We'll take the weekend to cool down before we figure out next steps together. Thankfully, we have this cute little chubby grub in our house that giggles and makes silly sounds, so it's hard to stay super upset or in your head about anything for too long. I know it's going to be a hard road rebuilding trust with my mom, but I feel somewhat hopeful that things will be okay in the long run. Thanks again for your help. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Parents always loved my adopted sister more. So, when I built my own business, they tried to make me share my store opening with her graduation. I finally got my revenge. I, 24M, grew up in what seemed like a normal middle-class household in the suburbs, but my parents' behavior has been a constant source of pain throughout my life. They built their entire reputation in our community around being these amazing people who adopted a little girl and loved her even more than their biological son. Not many people know the full story of how this affected me. When I was 6 years old, my parents brought home Emma, 21F, my adopted sister, and everything in my life changed after that day. The day my parents sat me down in our living room to tell me about possibly adopting a sister, I couldn't contain my excitement. I spent most of my afternoons alone in our backyard, making up games and waiting for my parents to come home from work. I didn't have any siblings to play with, and the neighborhood kids were all either much older or younger than me. The idea of having a sister to share my toys with and someone to keep me company during those long afternoons felt like the perfect solution. When Emma first arrived, it was exactly what I hoped for. We played together, shared snacks, and I finally had someone to talk to during those quiet afternoons at home. The changes in my family started small but kept building up over time. My parents began focusing all their attention on Emma, making every decision based on what was best for her. They would cancel our weekend family activities if Emma wasn't in the mood, change dinner plans to match her preferences, and adjust their schedules to attend all her school events while missing mine. I started feeling pushed aside in my own home, like I was becoming invisible to my own parents. I know people might think I'm just jealous, but there's more to this story than simple sibling rivalry. The contrast in how my parents handled childcare for Emma versus me was pretty different. Within a week of Emma's arrival, My mom submitted her resignation letter at the accounting firm where she'd worked for 8 years to become a full-time mom. This was completely different from when I was born. Mom went back to her office job as soon as her maternity leave ended, leaving me with different caregivers. My parents were always stressed about money back then, working overtime and weekend shifts, which meant I spent most of my time either at my grandparents' small apartment or with whatever teenage babysitter they could afford that month. The babysitting situation was far from ideal. These girls, usually high school students trying to earn extra cash, treated their job as a chance to hang out with their boyfriends rather than actually watching me. I'd spend hours alone in my room while they sat in the living room texting or talking on their phones. Sometimes their boyfriends would climb through our back window or sneak in through the garage door when they thought I was asleep. I kept telling my parents about these incidents, and they'd fire the current sitter, only to hire another one who acted the same way. This cycle continued for years, and I spent most of my early childhood feeling like nobody really cared about my well-being. When Emma came, it seemed like it would change everything for the better. Despite being only 6, I took my role as a big brother immediately. I shared all my toys with her and even helped her learn the alphabet. At least whatever I could do at the age of 6, I did. Having my mom at home full-time seemed like an added bonus. I thought we'd finally get to do all the things I'd watched other kids do with their moms, like baking cookies or going to the park. Instead, my mom devoted all her time and attention to Emma, treating her like a princess, while expecting me to be mature and independent because I was the big brother. Things really started to get complicated when my parents decided to change my birthday arrangements. Emma had been found abandoned at a shopping mall, and the orphanage had no records of her actual birth date. The doctors ran various tests, physical examinations, dental checks, development assessments, and estimated she was around 3 years old when she was found. Instead of keeping her assigned date from the orphanage or choosing any other day from the entire calendar year, my parents decided that Emma should share my birthday. They presented this idea like it was some sort of special honor for me. Those early joint birthday celebrations were bearable, but I started noticing subtle changes each year. While I still received presents and had some cake, the parties became increasingly focused on Emma. Relatives and family friends would arrive with twice as many gifts for her, cooing over how special it was that we celebrated together, while barely acknowledging my presence. Everyone seemed fascinated by Emma's background story, treating her like a queen rather than just another kid. Meanwhile, I sat there, opening my presents quietly, trying not to feel invisible at my own birthday party. As people crowded around Emma to hear her retell the same adoption story they'd heard dozens of times before, my parents' decision to make Emma share my birthday still bothers me when I think about it. The orphanage had already given her an official date, the day she was found. We also had my grandparents' anniversary in March, my aunt's birthday in September, or literally any other day that could have become Emma's special date. But my parents specifically chose my birthday, claiming it would make Emma feel more connected to the family. For most kids, a birthday is the one day of the year that feels magical, to be the center of attention. But my parents turned this simple childhood joy into another reminder that Emma's needs always came first. They wrapped up this decision in pretty words about family bonds and sharing, making it impossible for a 6-year-old to express any disappointment without feeling selfish. My uncle was the only one who seemed to notice something was wrong, pulling me aside during that first shared party to ask if I was really okay with all this. By age 10, birthdays had become something I dreaded instead of celebrated. Emma controlled every aspect of our joint celebrations, from choosing the cake that I didn't even like to picking princess themes that made me feel out of place at my own party. The guest list situation was particularly unfair. Emma would fill our house with 20 or more friends from her various activities, while I was strictly limited to inviting just 5 of mine. This rule meant I had to carefully choose between my friends each year, sometimes damaging relationships with those who couldn't come. My best friend stopped talking to me for weeks after I couldn't invite him to my 11th birthday. The inequality of these celebrations became even more obvious when I asked to invite my friend as a 6th guest one year. My parents immediately shut down the request, saying we'd already reached the maximum number of guests our house could accommodate. Yet somehow, there was always room for Emma's friends and their mothers, who apparently needed to supervise their daughters at all times. When I pointed out that my friends came alone, My parents dismissed my concerns with their standard excuse about girls needing more supervision. Meanwhile, Emma's friends and their moms took over our entire living room, treating me like I was just another guest at what was supposed to be my birthday too. I gathered up the courage several times to suggest having separate parties. Each attempt ended the same way. My parents would shut me down with their well-rehearsed responses about Emma's difficult past. They'd remind me how she didn't know her real birthday, as if that somehow justified taking over mine. Or they'd bring up her tough start in life for the 100th time, completely ignoring that they were giving her a tough present by constantly dismissing my feelings. These conversations always left me feeling guilty for even bringing up the subject, like I was somehow being selfish for wanting one day to myself. Eventually, I stopped fighting for my birthday. I learned to put on a smile and play my assigned role in what had become Emma's special day, featuring her brother. The hurt didn't go away. It just became a familiar feeling that surfaced every birthday. During these parties, I'd sit quietly in the corner while Emma opened twice as many presents as me, trying to look happy as relatives fawned over her and barely noticed my existence. The one bright spot in all this was discovering my love for creating things with my hands. It started small, turning an empty cereal box into a pencil holder one boring afternoon. Soon, I was transforming all sorts of household items into art pieces. Our garage became my go-to place, filled with bins of collected materials, old newspapers, plastic bottles, broken jewelry, anything I could repurpose. I spent hours watching DIY videos, learning new techniques for making everything from decorative wall hangings to intricate jewelry pieces. My room slowly filled with my creations. This was something that belonged entirely to me, something Emma couldn't share or take over. What started as a therapeutic hobby in my teens had grown into a successful online business by my early 20s. I spent countless nights perfecting product photos, writing descriptions, and managing my online shop while working a day job at a local coffee shop. My handmade items started gaining attention on social media, and soon I had regular customers from across the country. My small apartment turned into a workshop, with shelves full of supplies and a dedicated shipping station in what should have been my dining room. After 3 years of careful financial planning, working overtime shifts, and reinvesting almost every penny of profit, I finally had enough savings to open my own physical store. The space I found was perfect. A former boutique in a busy shopping district with large windows and exposed brick walls. I signed the lease 2 months ago and spent every spare moment planning the store layout, designing displays, and organizing a grand opening celebration. This was supposed to be my moment to shine, to show everyone that the kid who spent his birthdays in the corner had built something substantial. I even hired a local photographer to document the whole event. When I told my parents about the store opening, their reaction followed a familiar pattern. They seemed excited for about 5 minutes before my mom mentioned that Emma was finishing college around the same time. Before I could even finish describing my plans for the opening party, they were already suggesting we combine it with Emma's graduation celebration. Think about it, we can invite everyone once instead of making them come to 2 separate events, my mom said, while my dad nodded along, as if this was the most reasonable suggestion in the world. They didn't even seem to notice the irony of once again trying to merge my milestone with Emma's. I refused immediately, explaining that I wanted this celebration to focus on my achievement. My parents looked shocked at my resistance, like they couldn't understand why I wouldn't want to share this moment too. They kept pushing, saying I was being difficult and selfish, using their familiar guilt tactics about making things easier for everyone. The same phrases they'd used throughout my childhood came back. It's just one day. And, why can't you be more understanding? This time was different, though. I'd spent years building this business by myself, staying up late to fill orders, dealing with difficult customers, and learning everything about running a company through trial and error. I stood my ground and told them directly that this event would be about my store launch only. Their attempts to make me feel guilty didn't work anymore. When they realized I wasn't backing down, my parents got upset and suggested they might not come to the opening at all. For the first time in my life, I told them that was their choice to make. The whole situation left me feeling frustrated and confused. Here I was, their son, achieving something significant entirely through my own efforts, and instead of being proud and supportive, they were trying to dilute my accomplishment by making it about Emma again. Even as an adult with my own business, they couldn't see me as deserving of my own celebration. The same patterns from my childhood were playing out again, but this time I wasn't a 6-year-old who could be convinced to share his special day. I decided that my store opening would be my moment alone, regardless of who showed up to celebrate it. Date 1. After sharing my frustration online, I received hundreds of responses, but one comment really stuck with me. A person pointed out that my parents had unknowingly handed me the perfect opportunity to take revenge. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. My store launch would naturally overshadow a college graduation, especially when I could offer everyone exclusive discounts and first access to my products. People are always more interested in something that benefits them directly. Instead of continuing to fight against the combined celebration, I sent my parents a message agreeing to their plan. I told them I'd reconsidered and thought they were right about bringing everyone together for one big celebration. My parents were thrilled with my apparent change of heart, probably thinking they'd won me over with their guilt trips again. I maintained this cooperative attitude during all the planning meetings, nodding along as they discussed decoration themes and menu options. My parents took complete control of the party planning, just as I expected they would. They contacted all our relatives and family friends, organized the catering, and booked an expensive venue, all centered around Emma's graduation theme. Every decision was made according to Emma's preferences, from the color scheme to the type of music that would be played. The invitation cards they sent out were the final confirmation that I'd made the right decision. They designed these fancy, gold-bordered cards with "Celebrating Emma's Graduation" in large, elegant letters across the top. My store announcement wasn't mentioned anywhere, not even in the small print at the bottom. My parents probably thought this would upset me, but it actually worked perfectly for my plans. Their complete focus on Emma's achievement meant that my announcement would come as a total surprise to everyone attending. I spent these weeks quietly preparing my own materials and finalizing the details of my store launch. The party venue was exactly what you'd expect from my parents. They'd invited practically everyone. The timing for my announcement couldn't have been more perfect. Right after all the speeches, but before the cake cutting. I caught the bartender's eye, and he handed me a fresh glass of champagne. Everyone's attention turned to me as I stood up, probably expecting another tribute to Emma. I had prepared my promotional materials earlier, working with the venue staff while my parents were busy greeting guests. My announcement was pretty short, and I didn't need flowery language or emotional appeals. I simply stated that after years of building my online business, I was opening my first physical store next month. Within minutes, groups formed around me as people asked about the store location, the products I'd be carrying, and the special discounts I'd be offering to family and friends. My aunt, who had just finished giving a speech about Emma's academic achievements, was now showing everyone pictures of my products on her phone. The contrast between my parents' public and private reactions was striking. Throughout the evening, in front of guests, they maintained their usual perfect image, forcing smiles and nodding along as relatives congratulated me. But I could read the tension in their body language. My mom's hands shaking slightly as she served cake, my dad's jaw clenching every time someone mentioned my store. Emma vanished from her own graduation party right after her champagne toast fell flat, with barely anyone paying attention to her practice speech about her amazing college journey. Once the last relative drove away and the catering staff began cleaning up, my mom finally let her facade crack. She cornered me. The same woman who had spent years teaching me to share the spotlight was now accusing me of ruining her precious daughter's graduation celebration. I explained my position calmly, pointing out that this joint celebration was their idea, not mine, and that I had simply made an announcement about my business as planned. My father's reaction revealed just how deeply their favoritism ran. Instead of acknowledging their years of unequal treatment, he immediately jumped to accusing me of jealousy. This was the same pattern I'd experienced since childhood. Any attempt to claim space for myself was labeled as jealousy or selfishness. I finally said what I'd been holding back for 20 years. I laid out every birthday, every celebration, every moment that had been hijacked and transformed into Emma's special time. For once, I wasn't asking for understanding or approval. I was simply stating facts about their pattern of behavior. My parents fell back on their usual defense strategy, recycling the same excuses they'd used throughout our childhood. Once again, they brought up Emma's abandonment, her difficult start in life, and how she needed extra support because she didn't know her biological family. These were the same justifications I'd heard at every birthday, every school event, and every family gathering where my needs had been pushed aside. But this time, their words didn't make me feel guilty. I'd spent years processing these feelings with my therapist, understanding that their behavior wasn't about Emma's needs. It was about their need to be seen as saviors. What none of us realized was that Emma had returned to the venue and was standing in the doorway during our confrontation. She burst into the room, mascara running down her face, putting on the emotional display that had always worked so well in the past. Her accusations, claiming that I had always hated her, that I was jealous of her place in the family. The reality was that I'd spent my childhood trying to be the perfect big brother, giving up my space and my celebrations while being told it was never enough. Now she was acting like she'd been the victim of my resentment rather than the beneficiary of our parents' constant favoritism. The days following the party showed just how deeply entrenched my parents' favoritism was. Instead of acknowledging how their actions had contributed to the situation, they focused entirely on Emma's hurt feelings. They called me repeatedly, demanding not just an apology but suggesting I should finance a vacation for Emma to help her recover from the stress. The absurdity of their request was stunning. They wanted me to spend thousands of dollars to compensate Emma because people had shown genuine interest in my business achievement instead of her graduation. Their solution to Emma feeling overshadowed at one party was to demand I hand over my hard-earned money to fund her holiday. My response to their demands was simple. I walked away. After years of trying to be understanding and accommodating, I was done playing their game. My parents seemed shocked that I wouldn't immediately give in and apologize, like I had so many times before. Emma's tears had always been their trump card, but this time they weren't working. The fact that they couldn't see the hypocrisy, Emma being upset about sharing attention at one party, while I'd been forced to share or give up the spotlight at every celebration for 20 years, showed me nothing would ever change. This wasn't the first time I tried to address these issues with my family. Throughout my late teens and early 20s, I attempted multiple conversations with my parents about their favoritism. I chose different approaches, trying to have calm discussions during family dinners, writing them lengthy emails explaining my feelings, even suggesting family therapy. Each attempt was met with the same response. Emma had a difficult start in life. This phrase became their universal excuse, a way to dismiss any pain or frustration I expressed. During one particularly difficult conversation when I was 19, I broke down crying while describing how lonely I felt at my own birthday parties, and my mom's only response was to remind me about Emma's abandonment. After years of this pattern, I finally accepted that my parents were incapable of seeing their behavior clearly. I moved out of their house at 21, using the initial profits from my online business to rent a small apartment across town. Since then, our relationship has become increasingly superficial. We exchange birthday messages, share major life updates, and occasionally see each other at family gatherings, but there's no real connection anymore. No deep conversations or emotional sharing. They still don't understand why I've distanced myself, still blame me for not being more accommodating to Emma's needs. But I've stopped expecting them to change or to see things from my perspective. Update 2. Just when I thought my parents had reached their limit with the graduation party drama, they managed to surprise me with an even more outrageous demand before my store's grand opening. They showed up at my apartment unannounced. At first, they acted casual, asking about the store preparations while sitting awkwardly on my couch. But then they told me their real reason for visiting. They wanted me to hire Emma as the store manager. Their justification was that since she had a college degree, she shouldn't have to go through normal job hunting like everyone else. They seemed to think that my years of hard work building this business meant I was obligated to provide Emma with a ready-made career. The conversation quickly became surreal as my parents listed Emma's qualifications for managing my store. According to my dad, her main credentials were that she was smart, had a generic business degree, and was pretty, as if physical appearance had anything to do with running a retail business. I had spent years learning about inventory management, customer service, and business operations, But apparently Emma's good looks trumped all that experience. When I sarcastically asked if there was anything else they wanted me to do for their precious daughter, my mom didn't miss a beat before suggesting that Emma should also be the one to cut the ribbon at the store opening. Her reasoning? It would make up for Emma feeling overshadowed at her graduation party. They wanted me to hand over a management position in my business to someone with zero retail experience and let her be the face of my store opening. All because they thought Emma deserved another moment in the spotlight. But this wasn't about sharing toys or birthday parties anymore. This was my livelihood, my professional achievement, something I had built from scratch without any help from them. Their reaction to my refusal followed the familiar pattern of emotional manipulation they'd used throughout my life. First came the guilt trips, then the accusations of selfishness, and finally the threats. My mom delivered their ultimatum with the same certainty she'd used when forcing me to share my birthdays. Either I gave Emma what she wanted, or they wouldn't attend the store opening. The smug look on Emma's face as they made this threat told me she expected me to give in, like I always had before. Instead, I did something that shocked them all. I accepted their terms and told them not to come at all. The store opening exceeded all my expectations. Even without my immediate family there, the space was packed with supportive friends, loyal customers from my online business, and my extended family showed up in force. When relatives awkwardly asked about my parents' absence, I told them the truth, without embarrassment or apology. Some offered sympathetic words, while others seemed uncomfortable, but I was past caring about managing other people's feelings about my family situation. Months have passed since the opening, and my store is thriving. My parents tried their usual silent treatment, expecting me to come apologizing like I had so many times before. But their silence has become peaceful rather than painful. I no longer feel the need to make myself smaller to accommodate their vision of the perfect family. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Sil called and insisted that I babysit her kids while I was at my mom's funeral because she and my MIL wanted to go on a shopping spree. So I called CPS and this happened. My mother was paralyzed from the waist down and had always been suffering from several health issues since the time I can remember. Her condition required constant care and attention, which placed a significant burden on our family. My father worked as a truck driver, so he was often gone for long hours, sometimes even days. Dad and I did everything we could to ensure Mom was comfortable and well cared for. However, his job's demanding nature meant that I had to shoulder a lot of the caregiving duties on my own. We had a nurse who would come to help out occasionally, but it wasn't often enough. We simply didn't have the financial means to hire a full-time caregiver. The times when the nurse was there felt like a relief, but those moments were rare. This left me with the responsibility of taking care of my mom for the majority of the time. Every day after school, I would come home and immediately tend to my mom's needs. Whether it was helping her with her physical therapy exercises, preparing her meals, helping her to relieve herself in the washroom, or just keeping her company, it was a full-time job in itself. There were so many days when I was exhausted and felt like I was missing out on my teenage years. While my friends were out having fun, I was at home ensuring Mom was okay. She was very needy and would not even let me leave her room to watch TV or do my homework. I would have to sit right next to her in bed while finishing up my assignments so she could feel like she was helping me out in some ways. As you can imagine, by the time I graduated high school, I was utterly exhausted to be at home. The years of balancing schoolwork, caregiving, and trying to maintain some semblance of a social life had taken their toll. I loved my mom dearly and never resented her, but the constant responsibility weighed heavily on me. I was drained physically, emotionally, and mentally. Despite the exhaustion, I knew I had done everything I could to make her life as comfortable as possible, given our circumstances. When it was time for me to choose a college, I deliberately picked the university that was the farthest from home. I knew that if I chose a closer school, I would be drawn back home every weekend to take care of Mom. I felt a profound sense of guilt about my decision, but I also recognized that I needed to prioritize my own survival and mental health. The years of caregiving had left me drained, and I needed a chance to recover and live my own life. My parents were not happy with my choice. My dad, in particular, insisted that I drop out of the university and take a gap year. He wanted me to apply to universities nearby so that I could continue to help take care of Mom. Meanwhile, Mom kept telling me that I could never live without her and that I was abandoning my family in their time of need. I argued back, saying that I had spent my entire life living under their rules and taking on responsibilities that were not typical for someone my age. I told them that it was time for me to get out and live my own life. My dad threatened to cut me off financially if I didn't listen to him. In a moment of anger and frustration, I told him that it was time for him to step up and take care of his wife instead of expecting a child half his age to shoulder the burden. My parents were furious and made their indignation clear. Mom cried for days, pleading with me to reconsider my decision. Up until the day I had to move out, she kept begging me to stay. Her tearful pleas and my dad's stern disapproval weighed heavily on my heart, but I stood my ground, knowing that if I didn't take this step, I would never be able to live my own life or heal from the years of emotional and physical exhaustion. It was one of the hardest decisions I ever had to make, but I knew it was necessary for my own well-being. When I finally moved into my college dorm, it felt surreal. I couldn't believe that I was finally free from the responsibilities that had defined my life for so long. The dorm room, with its simple bed, desk, and closet, symbolized a new chapter. I was overwhelmed with a mix of emotions: relief, excitement, and a touch of sadness for leaving my family behind. During college, I tried my best to stay in touch with my parents. My dad, however, always resented me for leaving. Our conversations were often strained, filled with underlying tension and unspoken accusations. He couldn't understand my need to get away, and he held on to his bitterness. My mom, on the other hand, missed me terribly. Over time, she began to understand that I had no choice but to leave. She realized that I needed this break for my own well-being. Because I had to take care of my mom from such a young age, I made the decision quite early on in my life that I never wanted to have children, and my mind has never changed. My entire childhood and teenage years were spent taking care of an adult, and I felt that I didn't have the mental and emotional capacity left in me to take care of anyone else in the future. I was always clear about this choice with every guy I have ever met. For a long time, I chose to remain single rather than date men who, despite knowing my decision to remain child-free, would hope that I would eventually change my mind. When I didn't change my mind, they would get angry, saying how women were supposed to have children and that it was ungodly of me to deny them. Their reactions reinforced my decision to stay single. I refused to let them pressure me into a life I didn't want, and I was determined to find someone who would accept me for who I was without the expectation of motherhood. This is why when I finally met James, who didn't want children just like me and instead wanted to travel the world, it felt like a match made in heaven. From the moment we started talking, I knew he was different. James shared my passion for travel and exploration and also my firm decision not to have children. He told me that he had undergone a vasectomy a long time ago because he was sure he never wanted to be a father. It was such a relief to find someone who was on the same page as me. Besides our shared interest in remaining child-free, James was kind, helpful, and intelligent. His spontaneity matched mine perfectly, and together we could just up and travel anywhere we wished. With James, I've been to over 20 different countries. Our adventures have taken us from the bustling streets of Tokyo to the serene beaches of Greece, and each journey has been an incredible experience. Now, don't get me wrong, we are not rich and neither do we come from wealthy families. However, because we don't have children and both of us are adaptable adults, we have been able to keep our priorities straight. We prioritize experiences over material possessions, and we live frugally when necessary to save up for our next trip. Our love for travel and our commitment to living a child-free life have brought us closer together. It's a partnership based on mutual understanding and shared dreams, and it has made our life together incredibly fulfilling. Everything with James is great, but I can't say the same about his family. Early on, James warned me that his mother and sister are very difficult to get along with. He shared multiple stories about how these two women have always judged every girl he has ever dated, never really approving of them. Over the years, his family has been consistently judgmental and always had an opinion about his lifestyle. James enjoys being a free spirit, embracing spontaneity and adventure, but his family has always wanted him to settle down and have a traditional job. This clash of values has been a significant source of tension between them. The The situation escalated dramatically back when James decided to get a vasectomy. His mother, Vinnie, was furious when she found out. She was so angry that she stormed into his workplace and yelled at him in front of everyone, expressing her shame and disappointment that he did not want to become a father. She told him she was ashamed to have given birth to a son like him. That incident was a turning point for James. The public humiliation and the lack of respect for his personal choices made him realize that he needed to distance himself from his family. Since then, he has reduced his contact with them as much as possible. While he still loves his family, he understands that their constant judgment and disapproval are toxic to his well-being. James's decision to minimize contact has allowed him to live his life more freely, but it also means that there is an undercurrent of tension whenever family matters arise. James's mother did apologize to him several times after the vasectomy incident, which is why eventually he agreed to let me meet her. I was quite well prepared for the encounter, having grown up with pushy parents myself. James's mother, Vinnie, was exactly as I had imagined, short-tempered and very mouthy. In our first meeting, she immediately had opinions to share about my red hair color and the tattoo on my forearm. She didn't hold back her judgments, making it clear that she wasn't impressed. When she asked about my parents, I told her about my mother's disability. Vinnie then made a shocking comment, asking if that was why I wanted to marry James, so he could help me take care of my mom. I was taken aback, especially since James hadn't even met my mother at that point. Besides, why would I need to marry a man to take care of my mom? Her ridiculous words made me laugh out loud. Vinnie didn't like that at all and said she found my laughter very insulting. I didn't care and just kept eating my food without apologizing to her. Over the years, our relationship has never improved, but I've never sweated about it. I let her do her thing and I do mine. Her opinions and judgments don't affect me, and I maintain a polite but distant relationship with her. However, the main villain in my life isn't my mother-in-law, since I can pretty much handle her. It's actually my sister-in-law. She has always hated the fact that I don't want children as much as James. She had always expected her brother to meet a woman who would eventually change his mind and force him into becoming a father. Instead, James met me, who shared his interest in not having kids, and this infuriated her. When she found out that we both wanted to remain child-free, she asked me what the purpose of my life was. I told her that my purpose was to live my life just like every other person, doing the things I wanted to do. However, she argued, questioning the point of God giving me a uterus, as if the sole purpose of a woman is to become a breeding animal. I responded that just because one has a uterus doesn't mean they have to use it, and that people who don't want to have children shouldn't be forced to take on kids they can't manage. Nothing would damage a kid more than having parents who don't know how to take care of them. Despite my explanation, Syl just shook her head and kept telling me how James and I were going to regret our decision when we were older and had no one to take care of us. I quipped back that I didn't want to have children just to have insurance for them to take care of me, as there's no guarantee they ever would. I also mentioned that I would feel much more comfortable at an old-age home with nurses and staff who could take care of me if such a situation ever arose when we were older. Syl never bothered listening to me, as you can already imagine. Over the years, she has done everything in her power to force us to change our minds. It all started with her having children and then calling us every other weekend to take care of them. Now, James and I love our nephews and niece, but spending time with them for 3 to 4 hours isn't going to change our minds about not wanting kids. Currently, James and I are working hard to build our marketing agency. Even though it has just started, we've already onboarded a few well-paying clients. This time is crucial for us, and we know we have to work very hard to retain them for a long time. At this stage, we also rely heavily on word of mouth from these clients to spread the word that we're a good agency for their brands. Because of this, James and I have been very busy with work and haven't even traveled anywhere. Syl is well aware of this. However, without ever checking in on us, she will just drop her kids off at our place unannounced. She will give us excuses that she needs a break or has to buy groceries but will be gone for hours on end. Whenever this happens, James tries to take care of the kids for about an hour before he gets quickly irritated. He then ends up switching on the TV for them and lets them watch whatever they want. Kids being kids get quickly bored and want attention, so then they start wailing or fighting among themselves, which is when I am forced to leave my work and play with them. I know they're just kids, but due to all this, I've started to resent them, and I know for a fact that James does too. This situation is frustrating because we are trying to build something important, and every interruption feels like a step backward from our future. Despite my best efforts to maintain a good relationship with my SIL, her constant disregard for our time and work commitments is creating a significant strain. We have had several talks with her, but she just dismisses our feelings, saying her kids are practically related to us by blood and that we should learn to live with them. This is why for the past 2 months, James and I have been escaping to cafes to work just to avoid his sister's unannounced child drop-offs. Whenever she would show up at our place, we'd tell her we were out meeting a client or had an important meeting that day. This way, we knew she couldn't leave the kids with us any longer. Of course, my SIL would get furious that we were unavailable and would demand we come back home. But James would argue back, insisting she needed to watch over her own kids instead of pushing them on us all the time. Later, my MAL would call James to reprimand him about not helping his sister enough and how difficult it is for her to be a parent of 3. I would encourage James to tell her that if she cared so much about Sil, then she should start taking care of the children herself. This would infuriate ML even more, as she'd then make excuses about being too old and having done more than enough. She would then continue to insist that we were young and needed to be around children. While we respected her perspective, we couldn't compromise on our priorities. The cafes provided us with a sanctuary where we could concentrate on client meetings, strategy sessions, and creative work without the unexpected disruptions that came with Sil's unannounced visits. This strategy has been working well for us for quite some time, and while it hasn't resolved the underlying family tensions, it's given us the space we need to prioritize our work and maintain our sanity. Recently, my mother succumbed to her ongoing illness. When my dad called to deliver the news, I was devastated and completely shattered. Despite the distance that had grown between me and my parents over the years, I still loved my mother deeply, and the realization that she was no longer with us was incredibly painful. James and I immediately booked a car to drive back home, a journey that would typically take 3 to 4 hours, depending on traffic. However, just as we were on our way, Sil called James. She informed him that she was exhausted and needed a mental break, asking him to take care of her kids. James explained to her about my mother's passing and expressed his inability to help at that moment. He assured her that after we returned from the funeral, he would be available to watch over the kids so she could have her break. But Sil's response shocked us both. She had the audacity to suggest that we take her kids with us to the funeral. She thought it would be a good idea for them to enjoy a long drive and spend a few days with us. I could hear every word she said because James had her on speakerphone in the car. I was baffled by her insensitivity and rolled my eyes. This was my mother's funeral, for God's sake, not a joyous trip to Disneyland. Her kids had never even met my mom, and the thought of bringing them to an event where people would be grieving was completely inappropriate and disrespectful to everyone, including me. Sil didn't even bother to ask James about me or about how I was doing, yet wanted us to just take her kids off her hands. James again declined her and told her that he was driving, so he would have to call her back later. During my mom's funeral, I received only a couple of texts from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law offering their condolences. I didn't hear from them over the phone, but I wasn't too bothered at the time because my focus was entirely on honoring my mom's memory and supporting my family through this tough period. On the day of the burial, James started receiving numerous missed calls from his mother, which he chose not to answer. Since I had left my phone at home, I couldn't be sure if they had tried to reach out to me as well. When we returned home after the funeral in the afternoon, I was surprised to find several voicemails waiting for me from Sil and MIL. I initially thought they were reaching out to express sympathy for my mother's passing, but to my surprise, there were multiple voicemails demanding that James and I come back immediately to watch over the kids. They explained they wanted to go on a shopping spree, which left me taken aback and hurt. As I listened to voicemail after voicemail from both of them, insisting on our return, James heard the messages too and immediately called his sister to confront her about their inappropriate demands. Like me, he was starting to get really frustrated with their insensitivity and selfishness during such a difficult time. We found it incredibly insensitive that they were more concerned about their own plans than understanding the emotional toll losing my mom had on me and James. However, when James finally got in touch with his sister, She informed us that she was already with Mael on the road, and they had left her kids at home. She insisted that we needed to drive back to her place immediately, as it had already been 30 minutes since they had left after sending us the last voicemail. James and I sternly questioned if she had in fact lost her mind, since we had just come back from burying my mother, and there was no way we could drive to her place at the moment. Hearing this in the background, Mael started to yell at him, accusing him of only prioritizing his wife and having no problem driving with me to my mom's funeral. She said he should also prioritize his family and have no issue driving back immediately and taking care of his nephews and niece. James pointed out how they could not just force us to drop everything for the kids, especially when we were still in mourning. However, Sil defended herself, stating that she had left the TV on and provided enough food for the children, so we didn't have to do much for them. But she insisted that we needed to return home as soon as possible because the kids would get hungry soon. My eyes widened in shock as I started to realize that she sounded quite serious. As a result, my husband and I decided to drive to her home, even though we were exhausted. We called Sil several times throughout our drive, but she let our calls go to voicemail each time. We kept hoping and praying that she was probably pranking us and that she would not actually abandon her own children. When we finally arrived at her place, our worst fears were tragically confirmed. We entered her living room to find all her 3 kids in a state of distress. Hungry, crying, and visibly shaken. The sight of their tear-streaked faces and desperate cries tore at our hearts. It was clear they had been left alone for far too long and looked very relieved to see us there. Immediately, we rushed to comfort them, providing food and soothing words. As we assessed the situation, guilt and anger surged within us. How could Sil have been so reckless, so indifferent to her own children's well-being? However, to our further horror, we discovered James' niece in distress as she had half a crayon stuck in her nose. She was apparently playing around with crayons and was now struggling to breathe properly. We had no idea how long she had the crayon up in her nose, so we immediately dialed 911, explaining the urgent situation. We also had to explain how Sil had abandoned her children, leading to their critical condition, since we didn't want to be implicated in this incident. The ambulance and police arrived swiftly, and we recounted the events. We informed them about how we were at my mother's funeral and then had to rush back home after Sil had already left the kids all on her own. Eventually, CPS was notified, and by then we knew this was a serious matter. Later, when Sil and Mael arrived, seemingly oblivious to the severity of the situation, carrying multiple shopping bags, they were shocked to see police and CPS personnel speaking with us. Sil erupted in anger, accusing us of betraying her and attempting to harm the custody rights of her children. She tried to explain how she had left the kids at the safety of her home and that she knew me and my husband would drive back home immediately, so her kids were never actually in any real danger. Fortunately, CPS and the police didn't agree with her. Following these events, Sil has been arrested for abandonment, and the children have been put under our care temporarily since their father lives in another country and will take some time to fly back home. Mael is furious at James and me for involving the authorities and has threatened legal action against us. According to her, we have mentally harassed and endangered her daughter by getting her arrested for no reason, as this could lead to Sil losing custody rights permanently. Are we for reporting Sil and possibly ruining her life? Update 1. Okay, so instead of repeating myself in the comments, I'm going to clear up a few things here. James' father passed away when he was quite young. This is why Mael and Sil have always been so involved in his life, as they both feel they have practically raised him together. Obviously, that's not true because according to James, his mother and sister used to abandon him as a child all the time to do their own thing, so he learned to pretty much take care of himself all on his own. This is also the #1 reason why he has never wanted to have kids after watching his mother be such a terrible parent to him and his sister. My husband does stand up to them all the time, but they just refuse to take no for an answer. Sil and her ex-husband are divorced. Her ex currently lives in another country for his job, but he is flying back soon to take on the responsibility of the kids. He does pay child support every month as well as had to pay a hefty alimony during his divorce, which is how Sil can afford to live a lavish lifestyle without a job. Since the court generally lets mothers have full primary custody of the children, they have been living with Sil as a result, and the father comes and visits the kids every other month. I don't think he had any idea that his wife would regularly abandon their kids at our place because we have never talked to him, but we are planning to have a sit-down with him when he arrives and let him know everything that has been going on. As of now, the kids are doing okay with us. They don't look traumatized, and we are doing our best to take care of them as much as we can. Unfortunately, James and I don't think we can take care of the children permanently in the future. We are not equipped to take on this responsibility, and we are grateful that their father will be arriving soon. Yes, Amael is still threatening to take us to court. However, after reading all your comments, I feel much better knowing that she doesn't really have any legal grounds to stand on. As usual, she is just probably trying to intimidate us and refusing to accept her own role in encouraging Sil to abandon her kids that day. Update 2. So, Sil has been released on bail currently, thanks to her lawyer. However, this arrest is going to seriously affect her upcoming custodial fight with her ex-husband. Her ex did come to meet me and James. He thanked us for everything and told us that he had no idea about how Sil had been treating their kids. He assured us that he would take his kids away from Sil, no matter what, to prevent them from ever suffering again. The ex seems quite well off, so I'm sure he can hire nannies to care for the children at his place, which is a far better option than what Sil does. The only thing Sil won't like about this arrangement is losing child support, which she depends on to maintain her lifestyle. We have blocked Mil after sending her a long text message in which we firmly expressed that we wanted nothing to do with her whatsoever, and that she shares 100% responsibility with Sil for abandoning the kids in that state. We further informed her that we were done with her narcissistic behavior, and if she ever approached us again, we wouldn't hesitate to get a restraining order against her. We are hoping this makes her stop contacting us ever again in the future. Update 3. I know it's been several months since I last updated, but I wanted to come here and give a final update about Sil. It turns out that she lost custody, and the judge rightfully let the father take full custody of the children. Sil's neglect and abandonment of the kids were crucial factors in the court's decision. During the custody battle, several witnesses, including us, testified about the conditions we found the children in and Sil's irresponsible behavior. I also testified about the multiple times Sil would drop off her kids at our place and practically force us to take care of them. In the end, the judge deemed it in the best interest of the children to be under their father's care, given his stable situation and commitment to providing a safe and nurturing environment. On the day of the court ruling, Sil told me and James that we had no right to involve the authorities, and that all we had to do was keep our mouths shut and take her children to the hospital if one of them needed any medical attention. She called me several insulting words and accused me of being jealous of her. James told her that this was probably the last time we would ever be in the same room together and threatened to take legal action against her, just like we had given the same warning to Amiel. Fortunately, over the past few months, the children have become adjusted well to their new living arrangements with their father. They are finally surrounded by the love and support they deserve. We video call the kids every weekend. James and I are very relieved that they are now in a stable and caring environment, free from the neglect they experienced before. As for everyone asking about my dad, he's doing okay. Since my mother's passing, I've been reconnecting with him more often. It's been a process of healing and rebuilding our relationship during this difficult time. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My parents mocked my gardening dream, seating me far at my brother's wedding, but now their restaurant thrives on my vision. I was always aware as a child that I was unique among my relatives. I am a 35-year-old woman who comes from a long family of prosperous upstate New York restaurateurs. My mother, 60, oversees all of the employees at our family's traditional Italian restaurant, which is governed with an iron hand by my father, 65. Next is my 38-year-old older brother, Mike, who is the golden kid destined to take over the company. I've been employed with Liberty Mutual Insurance for 10 years, moving up the corporate ladder to become a senior claims adjuster. My name frequently appeared on quarterly performance awards, and my office on the 28th floor had a breathtaking view of Central Park. I had a 6-figure salary, a cozy condo in Manhattan, and the pride of my parents, who never stopped boasting about their successful business daughter. On paper, I was living the American dream. However, I felt like I was slowly suffocating every morning as I looked at my computer screen while going over accident claims. My escape, my lunch breaks in the little rooftop garden I had designed on our office building, was the only thing that kept me going. I had persuaded management to allow me to renovate the abandoned area, paying for it out of pocket. Spending thousands on soil, planters, and seasonal flowers made my coworkers think I was insane. But those priceless moments spent among flowers and herbs were the only times I felt fully alive. I spent almost every weekend in Grandma Rose's garden, which was my genuine haven. The most exquisite garden I had ever seen encircled her Victorian home on the outskirts of town. Grandma Rose was teaching me the language of flowers, companion planting, and soil pH, while my brother spent his weekends studying the restaurant industry. One day, in particular, while I was assisting her with planting springtime tulip bulbs, stands out in my memory. The air was crisp with the aroma of falling leaves, and it was early October. My hands were in the dirt for longer than required, and Grandma saw it. She patted the ground with her aged hands and said, "You feel it too, don't you?" I nodded, unable to put into words how it felt to work with plants and how alive I felt in her garden. That connection to the earth, not everyone has it, you know? It's a gift. She showed me her treasured collection of gardening diaries that day, which included decades worth of handwritten notes about every plant she had ever grown, complete with meticulous sketches and pressed flowers. "Someday," she continued, "these will be yours, when you're ready to follow your true path." The pivotal moment occurred during Thanksgiving dinner the previous year, with the aroma of turkey and Dad's special gravy filling the air. It was the typical after-hours family get-together at the restaurant. Mike was showcasing the new wine cellar at the restaurant, his most recent endeavor that Dad had readily approved. As I sat there fingering the admission letter from the New York Botanical Garden School of Professional Horticulture in my pocket, Mom was talking about plans to grow the catering business. I finally plucked up the confidence to eat the pumpkin pie and turkey. "I'm going back to school," I said, my voice hardly steady. "I've enrolled in the Botanical Gardens Landscape Design Program." The ensuing hush was deafening. Mom's fork clattered on her plate and Dad's cheeks turned the color of the cranberry sauce. Mike snorted and almost choked on his booze. "What are you?" The wine glasses vibrated as Dad's voice boomed across the table. "You want to abandon your work to play with plants when you're not getting any younger?" Mom's palm gripped her chest violently as her eyes welled up with tears. "But you're a senior claims adjuster, honey. How many individuals would kill for that job? Do you know? How is your 401k doing? Your health insurance?" Every time he saw me caring for Mom's houseplants, Mike, who had been referring to me as the gardener since we were young, couldn't help but laugh. "So you're going to start gardening like a pro now, are you? Are you insane? Living in a treehouse is the next step." Even though my hands were trembling beneath the table, I made myself keep going. "My letter of resignation has already been turned in. The 15th of December is my last day. January is when classes begin." The plates jumped when Dad slammed his hand down on the table. "You can't count on our assistance if you do this. We didn't send you to business school only to see you lose everything because of a midlife crisis." Grandma Rose was the only one who stayed composed, purposefully putting down her wine glass with that quiet power that could still make my father feel like a little boy. She asked him, "Joe, when was the last time you were genuinely happy doing anything you didn't pick for yourself?" Feeling defeated, I drove to Grandma Rose's house the day after the Thanksgiving catastrophe. She was cutting her beloved roses in her garden when I discovered her. She was wearing her favorite faded blue gardening apron, the one with pockets filled with plant identifiers and trimming tools. Even though it was cold in November, as I assisted her with the pruning, I remarked, "Grandma, they don't understand. They believe that I'm wasting my life. They might be correct. Maybe starting again at 35 is crazy of me." Putting down her shears, Grandma Rose gazed at me with those aged eyes that had witnessed so much. "Your parents don't see the world the way we do, but they just want what's best for you, sweetie. These plants and the earth itself are magical. It would be a sin to throw away your gift." She showed me her greenhouse and her most fragile plants. She showed me a tiny orchid that was having trouble blooming. As the warm, humid air surrounded us, she said, Take a look at this one. I knew better, even though everyone insisted it couldn't be saved. The most exquisite things don't often show themselves right away. Like you, sweetheart. I began taking seminars at the New York Botanical Garden that winter. Basic living expenses and 2 years of schooling would be covered by the money I saved from the insurance company. I gave up my view of Manhattan for a little balcony where I could try container gardening when I moved to a smaller apartment in the Bronx near the school. The program proved to be more difficult than I had anticipated. Landscape design required intricate calculations, a thorough understanding of ecological and architectural principles. It wasn't just about making things seem nice. My dreams were filled with plant combinations and garden designs, and every night I would go to bed feeling both tired and content. Rachel, a 28-year-old classmate with bright red hair and contagious energy, became my best friend. One day, as we were working on our CAD projects, she said to me, "You should see your face when you're designing. You seem to be speaking your mother tongue at last." However, family get-togethers turned into an endurance test. Even though I shifted from the family table to the bar, I continued to go to the restaurant for Sunday dinners. Mike would joke that I hadn't mastered the art of properly pushing a lawnmower yet, while Mom would give me newspaper clippings about corporate employment openings. Dad would sourly discuss Mike's intentions to expand the restaurant. I entered a little landscape design competition 6 months into my education. It was merely a small-scale event organized by the city's gardening association. Making sustainable urban areas that could meet social and environmental objectives was the main goal of my design. I was shocked to take first place. Even a brief item about it appeared in the local paper. At our next Sunday supper, I eagerly broke the news in the hopes that it would finally alter their viewpoint. Rather, Dad hardly raised his head from his plate. "That's good, honey. But when will you start living your life seriously?" Mike added, grinning as always. "Hey, perhaps you could create a garden for the dumpster area at the restaurant? Make it appear really fancy." In an attempt to be helpful in her own way, my mother said, "You know, if you apologized, Liberty Mutual would definitely accept you back. Mrs. Henderson informed me that your post has not yet been filled." I contacted Grandma Rose that evening as I was driving home with tears clouding my vision. As I vented my frustrations to her, she listened to me calmly. She disclosed, "Your father was the same way when he started the restaurant. His father wished for him to pursue a career in law. Look at him now. He is so certain that his path is the only one. It's interesting how life comes full circle, my love." As the months went by, my abilities improved. Small commissions began coming in, initially from friends, and then from their friends. One local lifestyle blog showcased my container garden designs. My family, however, was unimpressed. As Mike continued his increasingly venomous gardener jokes, Dad would shift the topic anytime my work came up afterwards. Grandma Rose received the devastating news that her cancer was aggressive. She disappeared in a matter of weeks. She was still trying to give me gardening advice while propped up in her hospital bed the last time I visited her. "The winter bulbs," she said in a feeble but determined tone. "Remember to place them sufficiently deep, and never forget that you're doing precisely what you were supposed to do, my love." I had no idea at the time that the circumstances leading up to my brother's impending wedding would fundamentally alter the relationships of our family. However, that is a tale that is worthy of being told separately. Date 1. I wanted to explain what transpired at my brother's wedding and the fallout after my last post received so much attention. 3 weeks have passed since my previous post, and a lot has changed. First, Grandma Rose's will underwent an unexpected change. She bequeathed to me her entire home and yard, which is currently valued at well over $800,000. For years, Dad had had his eye on that property, intending to use it for more restaurant parking. Dad's face took on that recognizable purple hue when the attorney revealed her choice. "This is absurd," he blew up. Mike was even blunter. He scoffed and said, "Great. Now she can really play gardener with her own little kingdom." Amanda, his 32-year-old fiancée, snickered next to him and was already treating me with the same disdain as my brother. The fascinating part, though, is that there was a condition attached to the property. Grandma's plan for the garden had to guide my development and upkeep. She had left behind thorough plans and notebooks that included ideas for transforming a portion of the garden into a demonstration of environmentally friendly urban gardening. In order to save some of Grandma's rarest plants, I threw myself into remodeling the garden and collaborating with neighborhood conservation organizations. After word spread, I was contacted by a reputable gardening magazine about including the renovation in their Heritage Garden series. My brother's wedding followed. The large cream envelope containing the invitation was dripping with self-importance and gold foil. Given that Amanda's father owns half of the county's real estate, it was obviously intended to wow her affluent family. I made the decision to go, and I wore a basic yet stylish designer dress that I had purchased with some of the money I won from my competition. The ceremony was held at the most costly location in town, and Mike made sure everyone knew he had covered all of the costs personally. But I subsequently found out Dad had played a big role. The reception was where the real drama began. I was seated at table 23, which was adjacent to the kitchen doors and literally the farthest table from the main family table, even though we were immediate family. In fact, rather than my name, my place card said, "The Gardener." Amanda went out of her way to introduce me to her acquaintances in the society. "And this is Mike's sister," she continued, smiling patronizingly. "The person who, what do you do again, exactly? Put some flowers in the ground, or whatever." Behind their champagne glasses, her companions tittered. However, karma tends to balance things out. A famous event planner who knew me from the gardening magazine story had been engaged by the venue. "Your sustainable garden designs are revolutionary," she said enthusiastically as she approached my table, expressing her honor at meeting me. "I've been keeping along with your Instagram makeover project." The mayor, Amanda's uncle, took the microphone to deliver his address, and that was the real kicker. He complimented my creative designs and highlighted seeing my work on the city's new Sustainable Parks initiative. All of the society members who had been giggling suddenly turned to stare at me with renewed curiosity. As the mayor continued to compliment the family's gifted landscape architect, Dad and Mike sat there with their expressions frozen. Amanda was trying to control the situation by frantically whispering to her companions. Following the speech, a number of Amanda's family members approached me to discuss garden design. The head of the city's Parks and Recreation Department was one of them. For their next urban regeneration project, he said, they were searching for creative designers. Mom called the following day for the first time in months. She spoke hesitantly. "I read the piece on Rose's garden in the magazine. The pictures, they're stunning there. You've truly created something unique. Although Dad and Mike haven't mentioned anything yet, I've observed that the Restaurants About Us page now highlights their family's involvement with sustainable urban design. It's ironic that they still haven't offered me congratulations for any of my accomplishments. Next week, I have a meeting with the Parks Department to discuss the urban renewal project. Given that the proposed location is adjacent to my father's restaurant, it would be my largest commission to date. As Grandma Rose used to say, sometimes life has a way of coming full circle." Update 2. I appreciate all of your encouraging remarks regarding my most recent update. 2 months have passed since the wedding, and things have changed in unexpected ways. The project for the Parks Department was larger than I had anticipated. They sought to turn an entire city block into a sustainable urban green space, complete with community gardens and an educational center, rather than merely designing a straightforward garden. The catch? The proposal would drastically cut down on parking spaces near nearby establishments, such as my father's restaurant. I noticed my father and Mike sitting in the back row, their faces darkening with every slide of my presentation, as the first designs were given at the municipal council meeting. The parking lot they had been using informally for years would be removed as part of the project, and a community area and vertical garden would take its place. Mike got to his feet during the public comment session, his face flushed. "Local businesses will be destroyed by this proposal. Has anyone thought about how it will affect the area's well-known eateries?" He purposefully avoided eye contact with me. The mayor, Amanda's uncle, then raised his voice. "In fact, research indicates that urban green spaces raise property values and foot traffic. There are designated restaurant zones with outdoor dining areas in your sister's design. If anything, this should help your business." Everyone in the room understood the irony. It was obvious that several of the council members were trying not to smile. This is where things become even more intriguing, though. Our family restaurant received an unexpected visit from a Michelin inspector last week. My father had been dreaming about this moment for decades. One little issue, though, was that their famous herb garden, which provided the fresh herbs for their well-known dishes, had suddenly started to deteriorate. I was working on my project plans at Grandma's place when my mother called me in a panic. "The plants are perishing. Tomorrow, the inspector will return for dinner. Your dad. He's not doing well with it." My father called an hour later. His normally authoritative voice seemed strained. "We need your assistance." "Oh," I spoke in a neutral tone. I didn't think gardening was a legitimate career. He paused for a long moment before asking, "What is your consultation fee?" He choked after I named a figure. $30,000 for consultation and emergency garden rehabilitation? That is robbery on the highway, he spluttered. "In actuality," I said, "that is less than the going charge for managing horticulture emergencies. However, I'll offer you $25,000 as a family discount." They made the payment in a day. I identified the issue, poor soil pH and drainage problems, applied the fix and preserved their priceless herbs. The inspector's inspection went well, and the local newspaper included an article about the restaurant's possibility for a Michelin star, emphasizing their creative herb garden created by a family member and famous landscape architect. My father was questioned by the reporter regarding the layout of the garden. When he had to admit my involvement, I saw him fight to suppress his pride. The finest aspect? I had nothing to do with the unsuccessful garden. All they had been doing was following an old gardening book's out-of-date maintenance instructions. They had almost lost their dream review because they had refused to seek advice from an expert me. Especially, my father now has to grin and explain that his daughter, the landscape architect, created the restaurant's herb garden whenever someone remarks on it. Since then, the term gardener has not been used in a derogatory manner. The true fulfillment, however, came from an unexpected place. I was recruited to create Amanda's new showpiece garden by her mother, a legendary society queen. Her justification? The expression on Mike and Amanda's faces when they saw me at their house, talking plans with her mother over pricey tea in the conservatory, was priceless, especially when Amanda's mother mentioned my fee, which was triple what I charged my father, without any family discount. "Well, darling, if you're good enough for the city's urban renewal project, you're good enough for us. My design studio will formally open next week." The prime location, next to the restaurant where my father had been intending to expand, was the ideal spot for me. Their herb garden, which I now take care of for a hefty monthly charge, is clearly visible from the wide windows. It's interesting how life works itself out. The irony would have pleased Grandma Rose. Update 3. 3 months have passed since my last post, and I would like to offer the story's resolution. Your assistance has been amazing along our journey. The restaurant's adjacent urban renewal project began to attract national attention. The sustainable vertical gardens were featured in a number of major design magazines, and the project was nominated for an annual innovation award by a well-known environmental group. My father's restaurant received unexpected attention as a result of the exposure, but not in the way he had hoped. People started traveling especially to see that cutting-edge eatery with the magnificent herb garden created by the architect-turned-gardener. The family's skillful fusion of horticultural and culinary skills began to be noted by food experts. A documentary team from a well-known streaming service reached out to me last month about including the project in their Urban Change series. The gripping family story about how the restaurateur's daughter transformed urban gardening piqued their curiosity in particular. The producer wanted to shoot in the restaurant and my design studio. Given that local business associations were lauding the project's beneficial effects on the community, my father couldn't say no without coming across as petulant. A feature on the connection between culinary gardens was also desired by Food and Wine magazine. The producer questioned my father about his early resistance to my changing careers throughout the filming. His awkward wriggling as he attempted to explain himself was captured on camera. "We only wanted what was best for her. That's all." I had an unexpected visitor at my studio the following day. My dad appeared older and more exposed than I had ever seen him before. He was holding his original recipe journal from when he initially opened the restaurant, a battered leather-bound book. "Your grandmother was the only person who encouraged me to open the restaurant," he replied softly. "My father wished for me to pursue a career in law. Cooking," he claimed, "was beneath our family." He set the cookbook down on my desk. "Didn't I become just like him? I'm trying to make my kids live the life I believe they ought to have. 80% of their vegetables and herbs now come from a rooftop garden project that started with the rehabilitation of their herb garden." There were months on the waiting list for tables with a garden view. The restaurant's Instagram following exploded with pictures of the vertical gardens, and food experts complimented the harmony between farm to table. At a recent business meeting, even Mike had to admit the difference. Indeed, they were now required to set up formal meetings with me. Gritting his teeth, he acknowledged that their earnings had gone up 40% since the garden makeover. After her mother hired me as the official landscape architect for their country club restoration, Amanda's attitude drastically changed. All of a sudden, she was telling everyone how she had always sensed that her sister-in-law's relationship with nature was unique. Last week, everything came together. The success of our urban revitalization initiative impressed the city's sustainability board, which suggested a significant extension. My father's restaurant was to be the focal point of a green corridor that would link a number of nearby businesses. The catch? The restaurant would have to create a display garden out of the remaining parking space. In addition to promising to highlight the restaurant in their tourism promotions, the city provided significant tax benefits. This time, instead of calling a meal where everyone chatted over me, my father arranged an emergency family meeting. I sat at the head of the table in the restaurant's private dining room for the first time. "We need your help," he remarked in a meaningful voice. Not only as an advisor, as a collaborator. They made an unexpected suggestion. They intended to establish a joint venture that would incorporate the restaurant and my design studio into a horticulture and culinary experience center. In order to incorporate my professional name, my father even proposed changing it. The financial estimates were provided by Mike, who appeared to have bitten into a lemon. It was difficult to ignore the numbers. Even he had to acknowledge that my hobby of gardening had become a lucrative business venture. Mom produced a long-forgotten old picture of me at age 6 displaying my first tomato plant in Grandma Rose's garden with pride. "We ought to have witnessed it back then," she remarked quietly. "A corporate office was never the right place for you. The businesses are now integrating. An exquisite herb leaf design may be found in the restaurant's new logo. Each meal on the menu identifies the precise garden location of its ingredients, and the menu proudly states, 'From our garden to your table.'" Our project was featured in a national magazine's list of the top 10 innovative family businesses last week. When they especially commended the second-generation restaurateur family for embracing their daughter's goal to transform urban dining, the irony was not lost on anyone. It all began in Grandma Rose's garden, which is now a sustainable urban agriculture education center. We are collaborating with nearby schools to offer educational programs, and the waiting list for workshops is months long. The most unexpected thing? Before the restaurant opens, Dad now spends his mornings in the garden. He was wearing one of our branded garden aprons when I recently saw him diligently caring for the herbs. He appeared calmer than I had seen him in a long time. At family get-togethers, people used to make fun of me as the gardener. Do you recall that? Welcome to the garden table, where the gardener's vision meets culinary excellence, the host now says to patrons. I was moved to tears by a letter I received yesterday. A high school student who had participated in one of our gardening classes sent it to us. She wrote about how she was motivated to defy her parents, who wanted her to pursue a career in medicine, after seeing my tale in the documentary. Her love was environmental science. A sketch of a garden idea she came up with was included in the letter. It looked a lot like my early sketches from Grandma Rose's journals. In an effort to start our first kid mentorship program, I've extended an invitation to her to work as an intern this summer. I've learned a lot about family legacies from this entire ordeal. It's not always necessary to follow the route your ancestors paved. Sometimes, honoring their heritage means broadening it to encompass new opportunities. My father constructed a restaurant that served delicious meals and united people in order to nourish not just their bodies but also their souls. I added gardens that help children feel more connected to the earth. I want to express my gratitude to everyone on Reddit who helped me along the way. When my own family failed to recognize my value, your support kept me going. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who shared similar experiences of pursuing their aspirations in spite of family resistance. You made me understand I wasn't the only one. Stay on course if you're having similar difficulties. Occasionally, the same thing your family makes fun of turns out to be the secret to changing both your and their lives. Now on to the next story. Story 6. My wife divorced me. Went on vacation with her affair partner thinking she'd get my parents' trust fund. But instead, she got a lawsuit. Hello, I'm Aaron, a 30-something person, and I'm just going to try to write everything down here. I've known my pals have been friends with me my entire life because they claim that I'm the trust fund baby. They always attempted to get close to me, assuming I would be sponsoring alcohol at parties and holding extravagant parties all over the world. But every time I proved to be nothing like that, they abandoned me. My parents do have a sizable trust fund for me, but I'm aware of how hard they have worked to earn it. I am aware that money wasn't created overnight and that my father's business may be destroyed by a single error. I therefore put a lot of effort into building on what my father began every single day, but I came so close to making that one error recently. I didn't date anyone while I was in college except for Ashley, my wife, the love of my life, and 28F. I'm not the kind to casually date or hook up with women. My goal was to date in order to get married. But I drew all the wrong kinds of company when word got out about my parents' wealth. You know, having money makes you popular and makes others want to live off of you. I did occasionally sponsor alcohol and lend money to some of my friends, but nothing extravagant, nothing that one would anticipate from a trust fund baby. I think it's okay to do things in moderation. In fact, it's crucial because you have to be a member of society. I therefore made an effort to be liked by everyone, although I hardly ever trusted anyone. I met Ashley at my graduation celebration. I struck up a conversation with her informally, as she didn't seem to know me. We hit it off right away. After exchanging phone numbers, I took her to McDonald's for our first date. We had an incredible time. I fell in love, and she didn't seem to mind that our first date wasn't particularly spectacular. My first love in life was Ashley. She wasn't dull and didn't seem to be making a concerted effort to win my approval. She was just being herself. She was also incredibly intelligent. I seemed to obtain an image that was beyond my budget while I was with her, and I felt normal. She didn't seem surprised at all when I took her to meet my parents after we had been dating for a month. She seems to agree that I was wealthy and impartial. That gave me hope that she wasn't at all put off by my money. She probably wasn't surprised because that was part of her strategy from the beginning, but I didn't realize that at the time. Winning me over was a well-planned tactic because she was well aware of who I was and that I was not seeing anyone when she met with my parents. She exuded elegance. I fell deeply in love with her because she was so charming. The first female I ever took home was her. My parents were ecstatic about me. She never took any expensive presents from me during the year we dated. The fact that we weren't yet married was the only explanation for her refusal. After a year, I asked her to marry me. She was my parents' ultimate sweetheart. Since she wanted to work to increase our wealth, she told my parents that she only had one request and that they never asked her to quit her job. My mother gave her a hug and expressed their happiness that I had found a wife who was so encouraging. Ashley earned a respectable salary while working for an IT company. My parents threw a party for our second anniversary. They declared their intention to offer Ashley a present and suggested adding her name as a beneficiary in addition to mine. They introduced Rob, the trustee, and Ashley to everyone else. He worked as an accountant for the business that managed the investments and money's legalities. Rob had a daughter and was married. His spouse practiced law at the same firm. My wife's name was listed as one of the beneficiaries, and everything was handled. Ashley had a great relationship with my parents and always tried her hardest to make them happy. As part of her career, she also traveled and worked a lot. Later on, I discovered that whenever my parents hosted a party, she would travel with her affair partner. She constantly wanted to go and looked beautiful. Numerous times during these parties, I witnessed her conversing with Rob in a corner while blushing from the wine she was holding and laughing a bit too much. And even though I was naive and infatuated, I never once considered the possibility that she might be having an affair with Rob. However, these two had been having an affair behind my back the entire time. In retrospect, Ashley surprised me. She is a true professional actor. The idea of ever suspecting her felt sacrilegious because of how beautifully she treated each of us. She was merely waiting, though. My parents died within 6 months of one another about 7 years into our marriage. It was simply too hard to manage all the emotions and still keep the business operating. So I threw myself fully into my profession. Ashley began revealing her actual self for the first time in years at that point. She remained aloof after the funeral. I attempted to give her space since I believed she might be coping with her grief in her own manner. She didn't inquire about my well-being or mention anything about the death of my parents. I found that odd, but I also subconsciously chastised myself for not being able to express my feelings. It took me about 2 weeks before I made the decision to leave work early and speak with Ashley about it. On the way back, I purchased a bunch of pink roses. Since I had my own key, I opened the door and confronted Rob. I asked him if he had come to discuss the trust or something, since I was perplexed. Ashley emerged with 2 luggage from behind him. That's when I realized Rob had 2 suitcases too. "Oh dang," Ashley remarked, glancing at me. "I meant to do this quietly. I was going to leave you a note to inform you that I'm moving out, but I suppose we'll have to do it in person now. I'm leaving you, all right?" "Yes, you heard correctly, and yes, after we get back from our trip to Italy, I'll be moving in with Rob. Your parents ensured that I would receive sufficient funds to cover it. We're divorcing then. Rob will now file for divorce as well. Don't look like a helpless puppy now. Are those flowers for me? Thank you, I'll take them. Goodbye." Before I could ask her to wait, they had already left. There was silence after I heard the motor revving up. My wife of 8 years abruptly left me. Is the phrase, "the world crashing down in front of you," familiar to you? Well, that sums up my feelings the best. I didn't leave the house for 2 days. I kept the blinds closed. Cup noodles and chilled meals were my only sources of sustenance. I was afraid of the silence, so I never switched off the TV. I had no desire to take a bath. Someone rang the doorbell on the 3rd day. I assumed they would eventually go if I didn't answer the door, but that didn't happen. Whoever it was pressed the bell longer and harder each time it rang. The ringing continued for several minutes. After that, someone was now hammering on the door. "I know you're in there. Open up right now," a woman's voice said. "I won't go until I have a little conversation with you." I assumed it was Ashley, but then I recalled that she and Rob were on vacation in Italy. I felt a new surge of melancholy at the concept. I dragged myself out of bed and began opening the door because the banging and knocking wouldn't stop. A woman with red hair wearing a 2-piece suit was waiting for me when I opened the door. It appeared as though she would eat my head off. "Your wife fled with my husband," she remarked. "It won't assist anyone to sit here and be a wimp. In 15 minutes, get up, take a bath, and enter the living room. We have a lot to discuss." As soon as I didn't answer, she opened the door, met my eyes and said, "You stink." "Okay, Mom," I said before I went to the restroom. "I heard that," she yelled back. I laughed in spite of myself. After my bath, I felt somewhat human again, and the living room looked immaculate when I got back. The kitchen was no exception. Rob's wife, Sandra, gave her introduction. She explained that she had been attempting to contact me at my workplace for the past 2 days but was unable to do so, so she ultimately made the decision to come to my house. She was serious. What she was telling me was unbelievable. Sandra claimed that, similar to me, she was unaware that Rob was unfaithful to her. Only 2 days ago, when he left the house and promised to send his assistant to get the rest of his belongings, did she find out. Her world was broken, just like mine was, but she didn't mope about it. She began to dig. She started by looking through Rob's laptop. There he kept his work belongings, but he was hooked onto Facebook. She quickly combed through his conversations to discover who he was having an affair with. She swooped like a hawk once she was certain. She was very certain that Rob was withdrawing funds for his personal purposes after reviewing all of the documents pertaining to my trust fund. He was being helped by one of the beneficiaries, who was none other than Ashley. So it began little enough to go unnoticed, but ultimately he had grown confident and reckless. Although she wasn't lying, I kind of wanted she was. Sandra was prepared to destroy them because she had all the evidence. "I have a little daughter," Sandra said while I was still unsure. "I'll get every last dime out of Rob, and I'll completely destroy Ashley. What you believe doesn't matter to me. I only wanted to let you know. If you do not wish to participate, you're under no obligation to do so." She exuded confidence and determination, and I knew from a way that I could trust her. I was on board. Then we exchanged handshakes. We were working on a scheme that would cost my ex-wife a lot of money while she was on vacation in Italy. Rob and Ashley had returned from their 10-day vacation in Italy. Sandra and I wanted to see how they would react when the penny dropped, so we waited for their call. I had been at work on a Monday when Ashley called. She went on a tirade as soon as I answered. "What on earth is going on? What does Rob mean when he says we're having problems? Where's my money to? You mean the money from my parents that Rob used to buy you presents and most likely the house you moved into?" I said. "I hope my lawyer got back to you. It's Rob's wife, Sandra, who also happens to be employed at the company." Before she could utter another thing, I hung up and told her I had to leave that day. Ashley was waiting outside when I left work. She blocked my path as I proceeded toward my car, pretending not to notice her. I had known her for a long time, but I had never seen her so upset by anything. She requested me to explain things to her, since she seemed to be having trouble understanding Rob's nervous account of what happened and wanted to hear it from me in simple terms. I informed her that I had learned about the divorce petition from her attorney. The only difference was that she would not receive a single dime. The expression on her face, oh boy, she never would have imagined that this would be taking place. I saw the panic rising within her. After experiencing a moment of cruel pleasure, I felt a great deal of guilt for placing her in this predicament. It's hard to see someone you care about suffer, and I still loved her. I had to leave as soon as possible to avoid being manipulated by her. I brushed her aside and headed for my car. From behind me, I heard her yelling. She was requesting that I stop. "How could you do this to me?" was the final thing I heard before getting into the car. I wanted to lash out and tell her that I could ask her the same stupid question because I felt like I was being stabbed. Instead, though, I got into my car and left. In my rear-view mirror, I could see her completely confused, taking care of the automobile. Rob, meantime, had received notification that he would be leaving the organization. He was damaging the company's reputation, and it seems that word had gotten out since many customers had contacted to request contract termination. Firing Rob was the greatest damage control measure the company could take. Sandra arranged for the best counsel because she had several friends who were lawyers. She was confident that she would win the lawsuit and be granted custody. As I drove home, Sandra was providing me with all of this information. I felt a lot lighter. I wrote this up after returning home. I wanted to let out my frustration after my encounter with Ashley. Is Ashley being treated too harshly in your opinion? Update 1. Hello to everybody. I have an update now. A week has passed. I appreciate you helping me and getting me back up when I was feeling quite lost. I showed him this Reddit article during our first therapy appointment. "It's a good coping mechanism," he said. According to him, it's normal to mourn the person you lost, in this case Ashley, so it makes sense that I would feel extremely overwhelmed once I revealed the truth. I'll try to give you all a summary of what transpired this week. Ashley gave me another call. Her voice was softer this time. She spoke in a muffled voice as if she had been sobbing. I was asked if I had eaten dinner. "Do you want me to come over and cook it for you?" she said. After I declined, I was surprised. She stated she would be at my house in 30 minutes, so I assumed she interpreted my silence as a yes. No, you won't," I responded, finally finding my voice. "Are you serious? You want to come here, make supper, and set up a playhouse after what you did?" "No, darling," she said. We can talk even though I know things haven't been well. At the time, I was going crazy. At this moment, I believe I yelled. Bad? Do you think what you did was bad? Simply awful? It was evil. It was self-centered and cruel. You're going to hell with it. I would never again want to see your face. What the devil is wrong with you? I felt like throwing up at the next thing she uttered. I should stop overreacting, she said. For me, I believe it marked a turning point. At this time, I saw her true self, a woman who didn't regret her act at all, and would do it all over again in a heartbeat. Despite the remorse I had been feeling for hurting her, the call was a trap, an attempt to control me. She was unaware of my realization and continued to complain about how I was portraying her in the lawsuit as a gold digger, even though she was actually making money and had a job. I wanted to let her know that I had paid off all of her student loans, so if she was now living nicely, it was thanks to my family and me. She claimed that the only reason she wanted to visit was because she believed we should have a conversation and reconcile, and that I should drop my case since it was useless. It was impossible for me to refrain from asking, "What about Rob?" She claimed that Rob was simply different and that she was having an affair with him because he made her boring existence interesting. She then began accusing me of never being there for her and of being away on business. She claimed that she had a passionate romance with Rob, whereas I lacked it greatly. I was suing her rather than offering her an apology. By this time, I was certain she was attempting to bleed my ear. She could have discussed it with me, or we could have attended marriage counseling, I informed her. If she had been experiencing so many issues, the answer was never cheating. She started to insist on coming over and changed the subject. After hanging up, I dialed Sandra. I explained what had transpired to her. Sandra requested that I call her back and invite her over. I will also come over, she responded. She requested me to comply, and in order to find out her true intentions, I ended my conversation with Sandra and dialed Ashley instead. When she picked up, she sounded so arrogant. She claims she will be there in 30 minutes and that she knew I would come around. Sandra arrived before Ashley did. There was not enough time for her to explain her plan, and I was unaware of it. She wanted me to make Ashley sit in the dining room after she went inside. Sandra stated that she would appear in this play in a special capacity. About 40 minutes later, Ashley arrived, and it was clear that she had tried to appear presentable. She did look nice. She entered, gave me a kiss, and started to go to the bedroom where Sandra was. I halted her and requested that she take a seat in the dining room. "But why, sweetheart?" she pouted as she turned to face me. "Was it easy for me to forfeit my rights? Was your affection so feeble? Baby, will you not stand up for us?" It was then that Sandra emerged from the bedroom. Ashley muttered something along the lines of, "What the hell?" as she appeared too astonished to talk. "Ah, finally we meet the woman who is dating my useless husband, Rob the cheater," Sandra stated with a smirk to Ashley. "You did indeed forfeit your right to the bedroom, I see." Ashley turned to face me and said, "How could you so simply replace me after stealing all of my joy? You're having an affair with Rob's wife? We owe a lot of money, and now we won't even receive the money from the trust fund. Rob is currently unemployed, and it's unclear who released the information. I could also lose my job. You're incredibly self-centered. What do you mean, we have debts?" Sandra interrupted. "Is it comparable to a joint loan? Are you withdrawing the money and assisting Rob and Miss B or what?" Ashley swung her around then. "Absolutely, I was. Rob has had my support from the beginning. Do you believe he could have organized such a thing himself? Of course, I aided him. Not like you, wicked witch. You have treated him in a condescending manner. He chose me over you for that reason. Leave this place. When your husband is unemployed, how are you able to be here? Why in the world don't you support him and make a statement in his favor?" After giving me a charming smile, Sandra informed me that she believed I should send Ashley home. The task was completed. After receiving the signal, I held the door open for Ashley. Ashley hurled a barrage of insults at us as she walked out. What just happened?" I asked Sandra as she was leaving. Sandra winked at me after pressing stop on a tape. "We got a confession, Aaron," she exclaimed with excitement, her eyes gleaming. "We'll destroy them." I heard me say, "I'm not letting both of them escape. That's Sandra for you, my friends. She is cruel and cunning. I would be afraid of her if I were Rob and Ashley. She simply performs her job too well." Sandra admitted before leaving that she was the one who had clearly leaked the Rob news. I informed her that I was picking up on her intelligence and that I had at least deduced that she was involved. "I'll keep you guys informed. At last, the game is starting." Update 2. I'm back with an update which I think is a bit early, but I couldn't wait to share it with you all. Sandra is an incredibly vicious murderer. She explained everything in detail and submitted the recording to Ashley's employer. In the note, she stated that someone who would go to such efforts to deceive her loved ones wasn't a trustworthy employee and would likely attempt to steal money from them if she saw a chance. Sandra also had a long-standing friendship with one of Ashley's business colleagues. Sandra's buddy quickly withdrew from a transaction she was about to support, claiming that she had doubts about the reliability of several team members. The agreement was therefore off the table. When Ashley's supervisor heard the news, he was completely distraught. To salvage the deal, they acted quickly and dismissed the offending individual. That's all. My ex-wife was abruptly let go from the corporation. Both of them are currently unemployed and in debt. Sandra informed me that she had been receiving constant calls from Rob. He began messaging her when she didn't answer. She disabled his number and urged him to stop bothering her. "I'm having a great time right now. According to my therapist, who I've been seeing, Ashley ought to serve as a case study on narcissism." That was kind of amusing, After a long time, I burst out laughing. In any case, I'll update you all. Oh, did I mention that Rob had been arrested? Ashley apparently had to take money out of her savings account to cover his bail. Serve them well, LOL. For now, goodbye. Update 3. Sandra gave me a call this morning. She was enraged. Rob apparently rang her doorbell intoxicatedly early in the morning and continued to abuse her. The entire incident was captured on her security camera. He tried breaking in when Sandra begged him to leave. Only after Sandra threatened to call the police did he go. The worst part of the entire situation was that Sandra and Rob's daughter, Emily, woke up as a result of all the noise. She witnessed the events and is now traumatized. Children typically suffer after divorce, but witnessing your father go drunk on your doorstep yelling at your mother and attempting to break into the house is an entirely different matter. Since then, Emily has refused to leave her room. Sandra needed to go to the police station to file a restraining order, so she asked if I could come over at such short notice. She was unable to hire a babysitter. I assured her I didn't mind and asked them to call me at work if they needed anything. Sandra went out the door as soon as I arrived. Since Emily hadn't even had breakfast, she advised me to offer her some food if she came out. I went to knock on Emily's room as soon as Sandra left. I got a pin and shattered the lock when no one answered. I have no idea why, but I was feeling suspicious. I was contemplating the worst-case situations during the stillness. I was unable to remain motionless while the youngster was in pain. There was no one in the room when I rushed in, and I was breathing heavily. Then I noticed a slight movement. Emily was concealed beneath the bed. With the exception of her hair, the 3 or 4-year-old daughter looked exactly like her mother and was staring at me with fear in her eyes. She stammered in terror and managed to ask me if Rob had sent me and if I was her dad's buddy. I got down on my knees and said hello. I explained to her that I was actually her mom's friend rather than her father. At that, she appeared to calm down a little. She then began to stare out the window nervously and inquired as to whether her father had left. Since her mother was like a tigress and would do everything in her power to protect her cub, I answered that he was. At that point, she broke down in tears and confided in me about her fear that Rob would break in and harm her mother. I promised her I would never allow that to occur. In addition to losing a parent, this innocent child had witnessed what a terrible monster her father was, and I felt terrible for her. I persuaded her to play her favorite Disney film and come out. I served her some lasagna that I had warmed up. Sandra tells me that Emily was sleeping well on my chest and drooling into her favorite pillow when she returned. Emily clung to my legs and wouldn't let me go that evening when I was ready to go. She sobbed repeatedly before finally admitting that she was afraid Rob would reappear and leave her mother alone. When Sandra rolled her eyes at me, I stopped joking that her mother didn't need to be protected. I stayed the night because I knew it would be very hard to explain a restraining order to a youngster. Emily and I both slept soundly. Sandra served us delicious pancakes the following morning, and I left right away for work. That night, Emily made me swear that I would return to sleep at their place. Well, I suppose that's my life at the moment. Sandra's place is where I have to stay at night. Sandra has yet to find a good child psychologist despite her best efforts. I'll give you all an update following the initial hearing. Goodbye. Update for... Well, phew, I guess I haven't given you guys any updates in a while. The initial hearing has concluded. This is what a lay person like me has discovered. Rob and Ashley are completely cooked. Yes, brother, I do mean it. They're barbecue cooked. We have so much damning evidence against them that the matter is really closed. However, given the nature of courts, it is likely to take a long time. Sandra thinks it won't take more than 6 months. She also thinks that they will both be going to jail. Rob and Ashley will definitely not receive any compensation for the divorce. Rob is also required to pay child support. Rob and Ashley were unsuccessful in their employment search. I've learned that Rob works as a janitor at a local club. We witnessed Rob being assaulted by some loan sharks outside the court. For that man, things are looking bleak. He's done. He rushed to Sandra when he saw her outside the court and collapsed at her feet. We now know better. Yet, he persisted in pleading with her to take him back. According to Sandra's attorney, Rob won't even be granted visitation rights because the case is so strongly in Sandra's favor. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Mom sided with stepdad and his kids, kicked me out, but they forgot that I own the house. Now it's time to take it back. It never occurred to me, 35M, that my father's meticulous estate planning would ultimately cause our family to fall apart. There's a lot to digest here, and I want to make sure I'm giving you the whole picture, so let me start at the beginning. One of the big tech businesses in Seattle employs me as a senior software architect. My dad always had this kind of job in mind for me. Technology is the future, he would exclaim proudly after I was accepted to UW's computer science program. He had a profitable construction business and wasn't a techie, but he had a remarkable knack for predicting trends. Beginning with the recession of the late 1980s, Dad started his construction business from the ground up. Throughout some of the most difficult periods in the industry, he took on projects that other contractors wouldn't take on, using only a pickup truck and his tools. Back then, Mom told me they lived in a small apartment and were frugal, but Dad had this unwavering faith in his vision. He would frequently remark, "The key is to build relationships, not just buildings." That way of thinking got him through his difficult early years. Dad's business was unique because of the way he treated both customers and staff. Even if it meant losing some bids to rivals who made exaggerated deadline promises, he was a firm believer in open pricing and truthful schedules. First establish trust, he would advise. He was correct when he said, "The profits will follow." His business, which was renowned for taking on intricate restoration projects requiring both technical expertise and historical sensitivity, rose to prominence in the Seattle area by the mid-1990s. Because of the devotion he had developed with his clients and staff, Dad's business survived the 2008 financial crisis when many construction companies were failing. He didn't fire a single employee during that period. Rather, he reduced his personal income to zero and took out a second mortgage on his cherished Mustang. I learned more about leadership from watching him handle that issue than I could have from any management course. "Your employees are your extended family," he told me. "You take care of them, they'll take care of your business." I didn't realize at the time how much his managerial approach affected my own career. Many of his ideas were put to use when I was promoted to team lead at my software business. I established thorough documentation procedures for our code, much as he had kept thorough project logs for every building site. I was able to lead my development team through challenging project deadlines thanks to his attention on fostering good relationships. I met Emily, 34F, at a hackathon in my junior year. She assisted in planning the event while pursuing her studies in business administration. Despite my lack of sleep, energy drink addiction, and likely messy appearance, she somehow found my love of code charming. From the first time he laid eyes on her, Dad fell in love. "She grounds you," he told me following their first meal together. "Don't let this one get away." After college, Dad even assisted Emily in launching her own marketing firm. He introduced her to his network of local company owners, showed her how he drafted his contracts, and shared his business objectives with her. He would tell us, "Success isn't just about what you know. It's about helping others succeed too." Dad was always imparting his expertise and educating. Those formative years were unique. Emily and I would always make the drive to my parents' house on Sundays to have dinner. We would all sit on the back deck that Dad had constructed and chat about everything and nothing while he lit the grill. Even though he couldn't understand the majority of the technical details of my most recent work, he would still ask in-depth inquiries. Mom used to say, "There they go again with the computer talk," with a loving eye roll. Dad's pride and joy was the house itself. He purchased it with the proceeds from his first significant construction job in the 1990s, which was a historic restoration project that made his business famous in one of Seattle's older neighborhoods. This lovely craftsman-style home features a wraparound porch and a garage that he transformed into the most well-organized workshop you've ever seen. Labeled and placed with almost fanatical precision, each tool has its place. Dad handled the house as though it were a living example of his skill. Every renovation was meticulously organized and recorded. Every repair, improvement, and paint job was documented in a thorough spreadsheet that he maintained. "A house is like a living thing," he would say as he demonstrated for me how to clean the gutters or inspect the foundation. He maintained a maintenance regimen that included everything from checking the roof after winter storms to changing air filters. Neglect the little things and they become big problems. In addition to being his haven, the workshop served as a classroom where he taught me about subjects other than tools. In addition to adding unique storage options and a workbench he made especially for teaching me woodworking, he had completely renovated the garage himself. "Every piece of wood has its own story," he would say as we were working. The pegboard wall with delineated shapes for each tool wasn't just about organization. It was his method of teaching me that everything has a place and a purpose. Our job is to help tell that story. Our family held weekends in high regard in that garage. Dad and I would work on his 1967 Mustang for hours on end. When I was 12, Dad had purchased it for restoration, claiming it would be a project that would strengthen our bond as father and son. That vehicle turned into a life lessons classroom. His advice, which I still abide by now, was straightforward: always use the right tool for the job, or shortcuts look tempting, but they'll cost you in the long run. Although Dad might have completed the Mustang project in 1 year if he had so desired, it took 3 years. However, he was more interested in the process than the final destination. I learned everything from project management to fundamental mechanics from him. We took pictures of every component we changed, recorded each step, and maintained thorough logs of our development. "This isn't just about fixing a car," he would affirm. "It's about learning how to break down big problems into manageable pieces." I found that lesson to be really helpful in my profession as a software developer. Emily and I purchased a small home around 20 minutes from my parents' house after we were married. Although Dad insisted that we take out the mortgage in our names, Dad assisted us with the down payment. "You need to build your own credit history," he clarified. "It's about standing on your own feet." He taught me how to install ceiling fans and fix drywall as he worked on our renovations on the weekends. He was preparing me for the responsibilities of home ownership, even back then. At this time, my career was really taking off. I just received a promotion to team lead, overseeing a team that was creating infrastructure solutions. I enjoyed every second of it, even if the hours were long and the strain was great. During my lunch breaks, Dad would frequently call to check in. Without discussing anything specific, he was aware of the demands of managing a group and overseeing the work of others. "Remember to delegate," he would say. "You can't do everything yourself, just like I can't build a house alone." When Dad initially stated feeling exhausted all the time, we were discussing the possibility of starting a family. He continued to put off seeing a doctor despite Mom's insistence. "Just working too hard," he would dismiss our worries. He was working on his largest project to date, a multimillion-dollar development deal that would have established his business for the ensuing 10 years. In retrospect, I regret not pressing harder and insisting on those examinations sooner. Perhaps things might have turned out differently. At the time, the business was expanding quickly. Dad was discussing growing into historical restoration projects in the Pacific Northwest and had recently launched a second office in Portland. He has established a reputation for updating the infrastructure of historic structures without sacrificing their character. We embrace the future while respecting the past, he would tell his clients. Everything he accomplished, including his personal and professional life, was impacted by his love of preservation. The Mustang was the subject of our last meaningful discussion. He was discussing taking it to car shows now that we had completed the restoration. When he remarked, "We should sign up for the Pacific Northwest Classic," his eyes glowed like a child. He continued to plan for the future until the very end, saying, "Show these youngsters what a real muscle car looks like." It began like any other morning until everything changed. When Mom called, my phone buzzed while I was in an early meeting. We were in the midst of an important project conversation, so I nearly didn't respond, but I had to go out and take it for some reason. Mom was crying so hard she was having trouble speaking. Dad had passed out on a construction site. He had left by the time I arrived at the hospital. According to the physicians, it was a sudden and severe heart attack. He was only 58. The weeks following Dad's passing were a haze of mourning and bureaucracy. The funeral was crowded. Dad's business and community involvement had impacted countless people. Suppliers, contractors, and even rival businesses came to show their support. Everybody shared a story about how Dad had supported them, given them advice, or simply been there for them when they needed someone to confide in. One old craftsman told me how, despite being unable to work during a protracted illness, Dad had managed to keep him on the payroll. "Your father understood that business was about people first," he stated. The workers of the company were heartbroken. Many of them had known Dad for decades, and they told me things I had never heard before, like how he had paid for the college textbooks of one foreman's daughter, assisted another through a divorce, or remained late to teach apprentices the nuances of historical restoration. With pictures and handwritten remarks from both clients and employees, the workplace conference room was transformed into an unofficial monument. We were all surprised by how well Dad had prepared for everything. His attorney, Mr. Anderson, summoned us in for a meeting a week following the funeral. He took out this enormous accordion file that read, "Family Security Protocol," and was neatly handwritten by Dad. Dozens of carefully arranged papers with comprehensive instructions for various areas of his land were found within. I was given a 3-day tour of Dad's estate paperwork by Mr. Anderson. Each color-coded container had personal notes outlining his decisions in addition to legal paperwork. "I've never seen an estate plan this thoroughly in my 35 years of practice," Mr. Anderson remarked. Dad had even included a 5-year business transition plan with backup plans for various circumstances. After that, Mom began going to her church's bereavement support group. She first met Steve, 58M, there. Initially, she only mentioned him in passing. Steve suggested this great book about healing, or Steve said it's normal to feel this way. He was one of the group facilitators and had lost his wife to cancer 2 years earlier. Even if it seemed a little early, I was happy that she was receiving support. I was reminded by Emily that everyone experiences grief in a unique way. Every Tuesday night, the church grief support group met. Before long, Mom was attending church functions with Steve more often. After services, coffee gatherings became lunch meetings, which in turn became dinner dates. Our family friends began to worry about how quickly their friendship was developing. At a family get-together, my Aunt Jane pulled me aside because she was concerned that Mom was hurrying into things to make up for Dad's absence. Mom's changes became more apparent. Her haircut changed, she started dressing differently, and she even threw out the garden that Dad had helped her create. Every time I questioned these changes, she would respond, "It's time for a fresh start." Dad was hardly ever mentioned by the woman who used to spend hours narrating her life with him. It went more quickly than any of us had anticipated. Mom announced that Steve was moving in 6 months after Dad's death. James, 30M, and Lisa, 32F, his own grown children, felt it would be beneficial to bring life back into the house. I made an effort to be sympathetic, but it seemed like she was in a rush to replace everything Dad had constructed. I'm at a crossroads right now. How can I preserve Dad's legacy without jeopardizing Mom's chances for happiness? Emily advises me to strike a balance, but I can't help but think of Dad's letter. Son, preserve those memories. Update 1. I apologize for the wait for the update and appreciate all of the advice you gave on my previous article. 3 months have passed since my last post, and things have become much worse. Steve's domineering demeanor used to bother me, but now he acts as though he owns the house my dad left me. Steve made the decision to begin a significant restoration project last month without even asking my permission. The built-in bookshelves my dad had made for the living room were being torn up by contractors when I visited one weekend. As if he owned the building, Steve was watching over them and directing them to just throw all this old wood in the dumpster. These were the final project Dad and I worked on together before he became ill, so they were more than just shelves. He responded angrily when I approached him. He said, "Look, son," with a condescending emphasis on the pronoun. "This house needs to be brought into the 21st century. Your father's taste was well dated. We're doing you a favor by increasing the property value." I reminded him that any modifications required my consent legally. Mom obviously agreed with him, but he simply chuckled and added, "Your mother and I live here. We don't need permission to improve our home." "Steve knows about these things," she acknowledged. "He's just trying to help." The woman who formerly loved those bookshelves and used to place her collection of antique teacups on them for Christmas now acts as though they were just taking up room. I showed her Dad's thorough house maintenance plans, but she disregarded them as dwelling in the past. Additionally, the relationship with Steve's children has deteriorated. James has taken over Dad's workshop and transformed it into a CrossFit facility. While I was on a business trip, he held a garage sale and sold the majority of Dad's tools. By repainting rooms and installing modern vinyl planks in place of Dad's meticulously refinished hardwood floors, Lisa is treating the space as though it were her own personal design project. One evening after dinner, Steve grabbed me aside and said, "Since we're paying to live here, we should have our names on the deed. It's only fair." I had to explain him that they don't pay a mortgage because Dad's planning has paid for the house in full. They don't even cover their rent. All maintenance expenses, insurance, and property taxes are paid for by me. Emily recommended that we stop making weekly visits now that Emma is here. She is correct. No one benefits from the stress in that household. However, taking a back seat has only made Steve more confident. He began sending me bills for improvements that I never approved, and he began making them more regularly. I should be more sympathetic of Mom's new life, according to Mom's sister, who called me recently. I attempted to explain Dad's intentions and my legal obligations, but she simply accused me of being trapped in the past. "Steve makes her happy. Why can't you just let them make the house their own?" she asked. I found out this week that the growth markers that recorded my height from the ages of 3 to 18 had been removed from the kitchen door frame. Every birthday, Dad would measure me and write the date next to each mark. "It's just an old door frame. We can't keep every piece of wood just because your father touched it," Mom remarked when I confronted her about it. I now spend more time sitting in Dad's old chair, the only piece of furniture I was able to keep in my own garage. Mr. Anderson advises me to begin considering long-term fixes. Legally, the house belongs to me, but I will eventually have to make some difficult choices regarding its destiny. When does being the bad guy become more important than preserving your father's legacy? And when your whole family opposes you, how do you defend the moral high ground? Update 2. I appreciate all of your advice regarding my previous post. The situation has reached a breaking point, and I finally made a choice that will most likely alter everything. I spoke with my financial advisor about the house situation last week. We may make a sizable rental income, enough to cover Emma's future college fund, because nearby property values have risen by 40% in the last 3 years. I discovered at the discussion that I had been so preoccupied with the sentimental elements that I had failed to take into account the financial ramifications of allowing Mom and Steve to live rent-free. Everything went haywire when I brought this up to Mom in our weekly conversation. She yelled into the phone, "You can't do this to us. This is where we call home. Steve has worked really hard on it." She refused to listen when I tried to explain that I was only considering my choices. She continued to talk about all the enhancements they had made, utterly disregarding the fact that I had never given my approval for these changes. An hour later, Steve called. He was upset, and his tone was different from his usual arrogant demeanor. "Listen here," he announced. "In this house, we have established a life. Because you're missing your father, you can't just walk in and ruin everything." He interrupted me when I attempted to explain the financial issues, stating that they now had sweat equity in the property. I reminded him that the house belonged to me legally. "There's a reason why Dad left it to me." "Your father isn't here anymore," he replied. "You must consider the living." I talked to Emily about it and talked to Mr. Anderson about it before deciding on it. The following day, when I arrived at the house, Mom and Steve were working on yet another remodeling job in the dining room. They had begun ripping out the original crown molding, which Dad had specifically milled to blend in with the house's antique style. That image made me more determined. "They have 2 weeks to find another place to live," I told them. Mom burst into tears at once, accusing me of being callous and harsh. Steve tried to scare me by arguing with me about my inability to throw them out on the street. He began enumerating all of their local ties, including his place of employment, their church, and their neighborhood pals. When faced with challenging circumstances, I maintained my composure and firmness, as my father had taught me. I declared, "This is my property. Dad left it to me for a reason, and I'm exercising my legal right as the owner." Steve's cheeks flushed, and he began to enumerate all the money they had spent on upgrades. I informed him that the historical value of the property had actually been diminished by these unapproved alterations. When Lisa returned home and joined the debate, things became worse. Mom utilized her pregnancy as emotional leverage right away. "How are you able to treat your stepsister in this way? She will give birth to a child." Although Lisa's pregnancy is significant to them, I had to tell them that it does not affect my property rights and that she is not my stepsister. There has been an ongoing assault of emotional manipulation ever since. Mom's whole family has banded together to oppose me. Her sister called sobbing and said their parents wanted to make sure Mom was safe. Messages regarding the challenging rental market were left by Steve's brother, a local real estate agent. Long messages on Christian ideals and family loyalty are even coming from distant cousins who I hardly know. Dealing with family friends who have known me since my early years is the most difficult. People who grew up with me now tell me how unhappy they are with my decisions, and every call seems like another tiny betrayal. Some even claim that I'm damaging Dad's standing in the neighborhood. The problem is that this has nothing to do with cruelty or profit. This is about honoring Dad's desires and preserving the things he created. It has been agonizing enough to see them methodically destroy all traces of him. The house was his legacy. I've paid for all of their expenses, allowed them to live rent-free for years, and put up with their unapproved changes. Eventually, enough is enough. They have 2 weeks to come up with new plans. I'm refusing to give in to Mom's constant demands for more time. Mr. Anderson claims that the law is entirely on my side and that I have been more than giving. He is assisting me with creating official paperwork for the notice to vacate, ensuring that everything is accurately documented. I realize that this makes me appear to be the villain in everyone else's tale, but sometimes standing up for what's right requires making difficult choices, even when others disagree. I learned that from my dad. Update 3. We appreciate everyone's help at this trying time. Things have come to an unavoidable end. Therefore, this will likely be my last update. I assigned Mom and Steve a 2-week deadline, but it's already passed. The past 2 weeks have been the longest of my life. They have been filled with guilt-tripping, continual emotional manipulation, and progressively frantic attempts to get me to change my mind. Mom did everything she could. Every day, she called, oscillating between fury and tears. "I changed your diapers. One day. I gave up everything for you," she would yell the next day. Steve also changed strategies, trying to negotiate instead of using intimidation. He recommended establishing a formal lease and offered to begin paying rent. I couldn't rely on them to uphold whatever agreements we made, though, given what they had done to Dad's house. When I got to the house, there were people gathering on the front lawn 3 days prior to the deadline. Mom had enlisted the help of friends from church, family, and even some of Dad's former business partners. They had prepared statements about moral commitments and family responsibilities as part of what amounted to an intervention. I listened to people criticize me for being a bad son for 2 hours. The topic of honoring your parents was discussed by Mom's pastor. Dad's old secretary remembered his generosity with tears in her eyes. My elementary school teacher even came to remind me of the morals my father had attempted to teach me. The hardest part was when Lisa got up and talked about how stress could hurt her unborn child while covering her pregnant abdomen with her hands. While Mom was crying next to her, a few of the church women were glaring at me. It was an expert lesson in manipulating emotions. But during this ambush, an unexpected event occurred. I had a strange sense of serenity as I sat there listening to everyone talk about Dad. People who hadn't even been to his funeral suddenly professing to know what he would have wanted. Dad used to say, "Stand your ground when you know you're right," and I could almost hear his voice in my thoughts. I got to my feet and spoke to the group. I described how Dad planned everything carefully to ensure his family's future, and how he had constructed this house by hand. I showed them pictures of Steve's unapproved modifications, including the historical elements he ruined and the fine craftsmanship he removed and replaced with flimsy modern fixtures. After that, I presented them with a letter from Dad outlining his reasons for leaving everything to me. Some of the elder business associates nodded as I read his remarks about trust, accountability, and preserving his legacy. They understood because they'd known Dad really knew him. Shortly thereafter, the group scattered. While some looked disapproving, the righteous wrath had subsided, and others gently apologized as they walked away. Without saying another word, Mom and Steve returned inside. I showed there with Mr. Anderson and a locksmith on the morning of the deadline. Although they weren't required, I had hired a security company to be on hand, just in case. The house was deserted. The remainder of their possessions were packed into Steve's truck. Steve couldn't help but give me a last poke, but Mom refused to look at me. As he assisted Lisa into his pickup, he asked, "You're happy with yourself? Your father would be so proud of how you've treated your mother." I didn't answer. Dad would have known. I know he had prepared for this possibility. What other reason might he have had for being so explicit in his will? I strolled about the home after they had left. I had underestimated the extent of the harm. Builder-grade materials had been used to replace the original fittings. Dad had painted over or taken out his handcrafted woodwork. We had spent so many weekends at the workshop, and it had changed completely. I have no intention of pursuing damages, but Mr. Anderson documented everything for any legal considerations. I simply want to put this chapter behind me and concentrate on fixing what can be fixed. Some of Dad's old craftsman friends have already been contacted, and they are eager to assist in rebuilding the features that were taken out. For now, Mom is staying with her sister. The majority of my relatives have stopped talking to me altogether. However, some sometimes call to chastise me on social media. Steve's children continue to share heartbreaking updates about their poor mother being thrown out of her home, but fewer people are responding to each post. Through it all, Emily has been my pillar of support. She reminds me of Dad's letter whenever I begin to doubt myself, expressing his faith in my ability to make the right choices. I will eventually tell Emma about her grandfather and the heritage he attempted to preserve, but she is too little to comprehend what is occurring right now. To restore the house to its original state, I'm collaborating with a restoration professional. We can preserve the spirit of what Dad made, but it won't be perfect. Some things can't be reversed. First, the workshop will be restored. The same place where I learned from my father is where I want my daughter to study. Being the villain in someone else's tale is sometimes the price of doing the right thing. I may never be able to rebuild the relationships I lost, but I can live with the fact that I preserved what my father trusted me with. As Dad used to say, integrity is about doing the right thing, even when it hurts, and not about taking the easy route. I believe he would comprehend. My last update will be this one. I appreciate everyone's support along this journey. Now on to the next story. Story 8. My husband knocked out my brother for calling me a whore, and now my parents want me to choose. What is the right choice? Sorry for the throwaway account. I have colleagues on my main account, and I want to keep this as private as possible, but also need advice. As my title says, basically this past weekend, me and my husband were over at my parents' house for a barbecue. The day was going great until my brother, for some reason, started to have a go at me, calling me names and belittling me. My husband pulled my brother aside and had a talk with him, and the insults stopped. An hour or so later, we were standing around talking with some friends and family members, and my brother came up to me and told me I'm a whore. His exact words were, "You know you are a whore, right?" He said it loud enough for almost everyone at the party to hear. All I saw was my husband next to me look at me. Then I felt a push to the side, my husband stepping in front of me, and the next thing was my brother out cold on the ground with blood on his face. All I heard is my mother yelling and my husband saying, "You don't talk to my wife like that. I warned you already." Before I continue, my husband didn't hurt me. He didn't push me hard or anything like that. Don't know how to describe it, but it was like a push that someone will give you when they are trying to pass. I went like one step back, that is all. I am not mad at my husband. I'm mad at my brother. The whole day he was demeaning me, insulting me, belittling me. I don't know where this came from, as he has never talked to me like that or to anyone that I know of. The bigger problem is that I have to choose either my husband or my parents. My parents are pissed, have given me an ultimatum. I either leave my husband and divorce him, or they cut me off completely. My husband doesn't give a crap that they are mad. The only thing he is mad about is that he only got one punch in, his words. I love my husband and don't want to lose him, but I also don't want to lose my parents. They have supported me through a lot and have always been there for me. I know they are serious, as this is the first time they have ever issued me with an ultimatum. They also threatened my husband with an assault charge, but he didn't care and welcomed them to do it. I'm stuck between a decision that will change my life forever, and I'm panicking. I have received messages from friends and other family members that have given me support and condemned my husband, but they are leaning more on the support side. Any advice will be appreciated. Edit to clarify, I'm choosing my husband. I have never questioned that, but I also don't want to lose my family. I am very family-oriented and family to me is everything. I want to find a solution where I can keep both. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. Info. Why do your parents think it's okay that your brother called you names? What is their excuse? Opie. They haven't excused his actions, but they are condemning my husband for resorting to violence. Commenter 2. What kind of family does this stuff? It sounds very dysfunctional. What were the circumstances whereby your brother goes off on you like that? Now your parents issue an ultimatum? I appreciate that your husband stuck up for you, but that was a terrible political move. Opie. One thing about my husband, he is sweet and gentle, but he has never cared what someone else thinks about him, other than me and his own mother. Opie's thoughts on violence and how her husband had done this to her brother. Opie. My husband doesn't resort to violence. I have never seen him really angry, and what I saw in his face was just anger. I don't know how to describe it. This is the first time I have seen him react violently to anything. My husband doesn't care at all. The only peoples whose opinions matter to him is mine and his mother. My brother as well has never talked to me like that at all. This is the first time. Opie's husband needs to earn her parents' forgiveness for what he has done to their son/her brother. Opie. My husband honestly doesn't care. When I asked if he would apologize for reacting with violence just to keep the peace, he told me my brother and parents can go EFF themselves. My husband has tried to cheer me up, but he hasn't pushed anything on me. He hasn't given me an ultimatum to choose him or anything. He apologized for putting me in the position with my parents, but he isn't sorry for knocking out my brother. In my husband's words, I asked him nicely to stop, And I did tell him he will face the consequences if he continued, and he didn't listen. He doesn't care what people think of him. The only opinions that matter to him are mine and his own mother. Opion, if she had dated someone before her husband, any chances that her brother called her names for another reason like cheating? Opie. No, my husband was my first, and I have never done anything else with anyone except my husband. Update. First, I would like to thank everyone, and I want to apologize as well for the way I worded my post. It's no excuse, but my emotional state isn't the best. Unable to link my previous post, just look at the account. My husband is my choice and I have no intentions of leaving him at all. Never have. I know it's early for an update, but I'm more confused now about what is going on. My parents invited me over to have a talk with them, but they wanted me to come alone as they didn't want my husband at their house. My husband refused to let me go alone and said if he isn't going then he won't allow me to. He basically said, with you alone there, they will just pile on you and that I won't let happen. So we went together. My parents weren't happy to see him, and my mother wanted to say something until my husband told her he isn't there for them but me, and if he is forced to leave I will leave with him. I agreed with him reluctantly. They agreed. My brother was there as well. He has a broken nose and chipped teeth and refused to look at me or my husband. He just kept looking at the ground even while talking. Apparently what happened with my brother is that he broke up with his girlfriend a month ago. It's more like she broke up with him. Don't know the reason, don't care. I wasn't aware of this as we aren't close like that. According to him, the reason he had a go at me this weekend is because of my life. According to him, my perfect life with my husband kept popping up on his feeds and he got jealous. Everything on my social media is with my husband. I don't really use it for anything else, but his feed was full of my posts and that set him off as I had something that he didn't. It got worse when he overheard me and my mother talking when I had a discussion with her over children. Me and my husband are currently trying to have a baby, and that just made everything worse in his head. His life was falling apart and mine was going perfectly, and I had and was trying to have what he wanted with his ex. He said he didn't take my husband seriously when he pulled him aside and my husband warned him. I seriously don't know why he went after me as nothing he said was true in any sense, and I did ask him why he said those things. He refused to answer me. I asked him why the comment because he knows my husband was my first in everything and it has only been him all these years. He refused to answer. I asked him if trying to have a baby with my husband makes me a whore as it involves sex, and he just left the room. I asked my parents why they didn't step in and tell my brother to leave or stop. My dad said he wanted to, but my mother told him to leave my brother as he is not actually hurting anyone. The same with the ultimatum, they wanted to protect my brother. I asked, what about me? And they were silent. All my father said was the ultimatum was my mother's idea and he went along with it. This is basically where we are at the moment. A lot more was said, but I don't think it matters. My husband did apologize to my parents for what happened, but refused to apologize to my brother. When my mother asked him to apologize to my brother, he outright said no. He won't apologize for standing up for me, and my brother got what he deserved. He was warned and didn't listen. My mother said it still doesn't excuse him for hitting my brother. My husband asked my dad what he would do if someone called his wife a whore. My father said, I will have a talk with that person, but will never hit someone. My husband laughed and told my dad he is a weak-willed, spineless man if he allows someone to demean his wife like that. That got my mom red in the face. I could see her get angry. That is when I told my husband it's time to leave. I told my parents that I will be going low contact with them, and the ultimatum they gave me broke the trust one had in them. I understand they wanted to protect my brother, but in doing that, they hurt me. This seemed to take all the anger out of my mother. They asked if I will be cutting them out completely, and I told them that is up to them. I don't want anything to do with my brother at the moment as he can't even apologize for what he said to me. I told them if they can respect my wishes, we will see. When we got up to leave, my husband went over to my parents and actually still greeted them politely, but told my dad, it's time to grow up, backbone. I don't know what I saw, but I think it was a shame on my mother's face because my dad looked at my mother and she looked away from him. This is where we are at the moment. My husband on the way back home apologized for possibly escalating things, but told me it was time someone told my dad the truth. He said whatever punishment comes, he will take and deal with any fallout. I don't need to worry or stress about anything. Edit. My brother's ex cheated on him, and apparently he begged her to fix things but she chose the other guy, and now he is just pissed and angry at everyone, women, and believes we will all do that eventually. Got a message from my cousin. The family had a go at my parents for allowing my brother to talk to me the way he did, and they came clean as to why he did what he did, but couldn't do it when I was over and we talked. They couldn't be honest with me and just refused to answer. Additional information from Opie. Opie. Honestly, really thinking about it, the only person I have felt genuine unconditional love and support from is my husband. There are a lot of things I just swept under the rug and thought it was sibling things, but looking back, whenever my brother had a difficult time, it was taken out on me in some way, and my parents have never stuck up for me. My husband has had my back around every corner and has never thrown things in my face like my parents or brother have. Opie on her parents' relationship and why they are not hearing her out. Opie. My father just follows what my mother says. In my 26 years of life, I have never seen my dad go against my mother with anything. Anything she says or wants to do, it's fine with him, no matter the cost. For instance, my dad basically has no friends as my mother didn't like them, so he gave them up and hasn't made new friends because when he tried, my mother finds something she doesn't like about that person and he agrees. Opie should have gone alone to talk with her parents and brother about her husband's behavior. Opie. So I should take the way he worded it over the fact that he wanted to be there and make sure I'm not getting gaslight? I took it as he want to ensure I'm safe and what happens doesn't happen again. My wording is bad as my emotional state isn't the best. That is on me and I should have probably double-checked everything before posting, but his emotional state can't be any better than mine. He is dealing with everything and on top of that, he is trying his best to keep my mood up. I know it sounded bad, but I took what he said with all the other actions he took so far to keep me safe. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.